I came home to find a stranger's padlock on the door of my own workshop. Inside, I could hear the screech of a power drill tearing into the walls I had built with my own hands 40 years ago. My daughter-in-law, Haley, stood there sipping an iced latte and looking at me as if I were the intruder. "We need this space," she said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "The baby is coming, and your dusty old hobby room is perfect for the nursery." I looked at the lock, and then I looked at her. I felt a fire rising in my chest that I had not felt since my wife Etta passed away. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Then you better find your own house to put the baby in, because this sanctuary is closed to you." She laughed, thinking I was joking. She had no idea that she had just declared war on the man who owned the very ground she stood on. It was time to show them who really held the keys to this kingdom. My name is Marshall Turner. I am 68 years old. I am a man who believes in the quiet dignity of hard work. For 40 years, I have been a master carpenter restoring antique furniture that others threw away. I take broken things and I make them whole again. It is a patient work. It requires silence and respect. But there is no silence in my house anymore, and there is certainly no respect. I am a black man who bought a Victorian home in Atlanta when this neighborhood was nothing but broken windows and crime tape. I restored every inch of this house with my sweat and my blood. I raised my son Terrence here. I buried my wife Etta here. Now I live in the guest room, while my son and his wife Haley act like they are the lords of the manor. Before I tell you how I reclaimed my dignity, I want to know where you are listening from. Leave a comment below. If you have ever felt like a guest in your own home, hit that like button and subscribe. The day it started was a Tuesday. I had gone fishing early in the morning just to get some peace. The house had become suffocating lately. Haley had been complaining about everything. The smell of my varnish was too strong. My boots were too muddy. My jazz records were too loud. She is a woman who likes everything white and gray and silent. She calls it minimalism. I call it emptiness. I needed to breathe, so I took my truck and drove to the lake. I caught nothing, but it did not matter. The silence was the catch. When I pulled my truck into the driveway around noon, the sun was high and hot. I felt relaxed for the first time in weeks. That feeling lasted exactly 10 seconds. As soon as I stepped out of the truck, I heard it, the sound of destruction. It was a high-pitched whining sound like a dentist drill hitting a nerve. It was coming from the back of the house. My heart hammered against my ribs. I ran to the backyard thinking maybe a pipe had burst or a tree had fallen. I rounded the corner and stopped dead. My workshop is a separate structure attached to the garage. It is my sanctuary. It is where I keep chisels that belonged to my grandfather. It is where I keep the unfinished rocking chair I was making for Etta before she died. The double doors to the workshop were closed, but there was something new on them. A shiny silver combination padlock. It was not mine. I have never locked that room in my life. I reached for the lock and rattled it. Cold steel, locked tight. Inside, the noise was deafening. Someone was drilling into the heart of my heavy oak workbench. I could feel the vibration through the door handles. "Hey!" I shouted, pounding on the wood. "Open this door!" The drilling stopped. A moment later, the side door of the main house opened. Haley stepped out. She was wearing a white sundress and holding that plastic cup of coffee she always carries. She looked at me with a mixture of boredom and annoyance. "Oh, you are back early," she said. Her voice was flat. I pointed a trembling finger at my workshop. "Who is in there, Haley? And why is my door locked?" She took a sip of her drink and sighed. "It is just the contractors, Marshall. Relax. We are just making some adjustments." "Adjustments," I repeated. My voice dropped an octave. "That is my shop. Nobody goes in there without my permission. Nobody touches my tools." Haley walked closer. She did not look scared. She looked like a parent explaining something to a slow child. "That is the problem, Marshall. It is just a shop. It is full of dust and sharp blades and toxic fumes. It is not safe. Not safe for who I asked. For the baby," she said, touching her stomach. "I am 4 months pregnant, Marshall. We need a nursery. The guest room upstairs is too small and the lighting is terrible. We decided the workshop would be perfect. It has those big windows. We are going to paint it white, put down soft rugs, and turn it into a Scandinavian-style playroom." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You are turning my workshop into a playroom." She nodded as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Yes, The contractors are removing that big ugly table right now. And those shelves full of rusty metal. We need to sanitize the space. That big ugly table she was talking about was a solid block of mahogany I had salvaged from a historic hotel demolition in 1985. It was worth more than her car. And the rusty metal were hand-forged Japanese chisels. "Open it," I said. My voice was a growl. "Open it now." "I cannot," she said, shrugging. "The contractors have the code. They are busy. Besides, we already moved your stuff out." "You did what?" "We moved it." "Well, we moved what was salvageable. The rest of the junk we put in the recycling bins out front." I did not wait for her to finish. I turned and ran toward the front of the house. My chest was heaving. I am 68 years old and I should not be running, but panic is a powerful fuel. I got to the curb and saw them. 3 large green recycling bins were lined up, waiting for the garbage truck that comes on Wednesday mornings. I threw open the lid of the first bin. My stomach dropped. There they were, my clamps, my saws, the jars of rare pigments I use for color matching, all thrown in there like trash. I reached in and pulled out a hand plane. It was a Stanley No. 4 made in 1920. It had belonged to my father. The handle was cracked. They had thrown it with such force that the rosewood handle had snapped in two. I stood there on the sidewalk, clutching the broken tool to my chest. I felt tears pricking my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of the neighbors who were already peeking out from their curtains. These new neighbors with their Teslas and their manicured poodles who looked at me like I was the gardener. I walked back to the house. I walked slow. Every step was a promise. I found Haley still standing in the backyard, scrolling on her phone. She looked up and frowned when she saw the tool in my hand. "Why did you dig that out?" she asked. "It is broken, Marshall. It is garbage." I walked right up to her. I am 6'2". I cast a long shadow. For the first time, she took a step back. "Where is Terrence?" I asked. "He is inside. He is on a conference call. Do not disturb him." I walked past her. I slammed the back door open. I marched into the living room. Terrence was sitting at the dining table with his laptop and his noise-canceling headphones. He looked up when I entered. He saw the look on my face and he took the headphones off slowly. "Dad," he said, "you are back." I slammed the broken handplane onto the glass table. It made a loud crack. "Your wife locked my workshop," I said. "She threw your grandfather's tools in the trash." Terrence looked at the tool and then he looked away. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Dad, we talked about this." "Well, Haley and I talked about it. We need the space." "You did not talk to me," I said. "I am the one who lives here. I am the one who pays the property tax. I am the one who fixed the roof last year when it leaked." "Dad, come on," Terrence said, his voice pleading and weak. "You are retired. You do not need a professional shop anymore. You can keep a toolbox in the garage if you want to tinker. But Haley has a vision for the nursery. She wants everything perfect for the baby. You want your grandson to have a nice room, do not you?" He was using the baby as a shield just like she did. They knew I wanted a grandchild more than anything. They were weaponizing my love against me. "I want my grandson to have a grandfather who is respected," I said. I leaned over the table. "That wood in there is not just lumber, Terrence. There is a client contract in there. I am restoring a Louis XIV chair. It is worth $50,000. If your contractors scratch it, if they move it wrong, I am liable." "Did you think about that?" Terrence blinked. 50,000. I thought you were just making birdhouses or something." I stared at him. My own son. He had grown up watching me work, but he had never really seen me. He saw a black man in coveralls covered in dust, and he assumed it was low labor. He did not see the artist. He did not see the businessman. He had spent his whole life trying to scrub the sawdust off his skin, trying to be clean and corporate and acceptable. And now he had married a woman who treated his heritage like clutter to be cleared away. Haley walked into the room then. She stood next to Terrence and put a hand on his shoulder, claiming him. "I heard you shouting," she said to me. "You are stressing me out, Marshall. It is bad for the baby. If you cannot be supportive, maybe you should go stay at a hotel for a few days while the renovation is finished." I looked at them. They stood there united in their selfishness. They looked at me, and they saw an old man who was in the way. They saw a resource that had been used up. They thought because I was quiet, because I let them live here rent-free, because I cooked dinner on Sundays, that I was weak. They mistook my kindness for surrender. I picked up the broken hand plane from the table. I put it in my pocket. The weight of it was grounding. "I am not going to a hotel," I said. My voice was calm now. terrifyingly calm. "And you are not turning my workshop into a nursery." Haley rolled her eyes. "It is already done, Marshall. The walls are coming down as we speak. Get over it." I looked at Terrence. "You are letting this happen." Terrence looked at his laptop screen. "Happy wife, happy life, Dad. Just let it go." I nodded. Just once. Slowly. "Okay," I said. Haley smiled triumphantly. "See? Was that so hard?" "We will pick out a nice color for the walls, maybe a soft yellow. You will love it when it is done." I turned and walked toward the stairs. I did not scream. I did not fight. I went up to my room, the guest room as they called it. I closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I did not call the police. Not yet. That would be dangerous for a man like me. Instead, I opened my contacts and scrolled down to the letter A. Alana Hart. She was Eda's best friend. She was also the toughest real estate attorney in Atlanta. We had not spoken in 2 years, not since the funeral, but she had made me promise to call if I ever needed to activate the protocol. I looked at the picture of Eda on my nightstand. She was smiling in that way that said she knew something you did not. "I promised you I would take care of them, Eda," I whispered to the photo. "But they have forgotten who takes care of them." I dialed the number. It rang twice. Marshall Alana's voice was crisp and sharp. "It has been a long time." "They locked the workshop, Alana," I said. "They threw the tools away." There was a silence on the other end. Then she spoke and her voice was like a gavel striking wood. "Is it time, Marshall?" I looked out the window. I could see the recycling bins from here. I could see the legacy of 3 generations sitting in the trash. "Yes," I said. "It is time. Remind them who owns the house, Alana." I hung up the phone. Downstairs, I heard Haley laughing. She was probably ordering curtains for her new Scandinavian nursery. She thought she had won. She thought the old man had gone upstairs to pout. She did not know that I had just started the timer on a bomb that would blow their comfortable little world to pieces. The drilling noise started again, vibrating through the floorboards. Let them drill. Let them break the walls. Every swing of their hammer was just adding another 0 to the bill they would have to pay. I lay back on the bed and closed my eyes. I listened to the destruction of my workshop, and for the first time all day I smiled, because I knew something they did not. I knew that in the state of Georgia, piercing a load-bearing wall in a historic property without a permit is not just a fine, it is a criminal offense. And thanks to the trust fund Eda and I set up 20 years ago, the moment they damaged the property value, they voided their right to live here. They wanted a nursery. I was about to give them an eviction notice, but first I had to save that chair. I stood up and changed my shirt. I put on my work boots. It was time to go downstairs and play the part of the defeated old man just a little bit longer, just until the trap was fully set. I stood there on the sidewalk and the Georgia sun beat down on my neck like a physical weight. The green plastic recycling bin was warm to the touch. It smelled of stale coffee and rotting fruit peels. I am a man who has spent 68 years building a reputation for dignity. I wear a collared shirt even when I am sanding wood. I hold my head high when I walk through this neighborhood that used to be mine but now belongs to strangers. But in that moment, I was just an old man digging through garbage in front of his own house. I reached deeper into the bin. My hand brushed against something cold and slimy before my fingers closed around the familiar wooden handle of a chisel. I pulled it out. It was a Japanese paring chisel made of blue paper steel. It was hand-forged by a master smith in Tokyo. I had saved for 6 months to buy that single tool in 1992. Now it was covered in yogurt and coffee grounds. The blade was chipped where it had been thrown against the hard plastic of the bin. My heart cracked a little inside my chest. This was not just a tool. This was an extension of my hand. This was the instrument I used to carve the delicate scrollwork on the restoration projects that paid for this house. I looked up. Across the street, Mrs. Gable was walking her poodle. She is one of the new neighbors. She stopped and watched me. She did not wave. She just stared at the black man rummaging through the trash. I knew what she was thinking. She was thinking that I finally looked like I belonged in the gutter. She was thinking that property values would go up once I was gone. I wanted to shout at her. I wanted to tell her that the tool in my hand was worth more than her purebred dog. But I said nothing. I just wiped the yogurt off the steel with my thumb and put the chisel in my pocket. I went back into the bin. I had to save them all. I found my grandfather's smoothing plane buried under a stack of pizza boxes. The iron body was rusted from the moisture. This plane had built the crib my son Terrence slept in. It had smoothed the dining table where we ate Thanksgiving dinners for 30 years. Haley had thrown it away like it was a used napkin. Then I saw it, and this time the air actually left my lungs. Sticking out from the bottom of the bin was a piece of curved wood. It was dark and intricate. I recognized the grain immediately. It was French walnut. I pulled the other bags of trash aside frantically. My hands were shaking. I grabbed the piece of wood and pulled it free. It was the cabriolet leg of the Louis XIV armchair. The chair belonged to a museum curator in Savannah. It was an authentic piece from the 17th century. I had been hired to fix a hairline fracture in the backrest. The legs were supposed to be pristine, but now I held one of the legs in my hand and it was snapped clean off at the joint. I looked at the jagged, splintered wood. This was not just damage. This was a catastrophe. This chair was insured for $50,000. If I could not fix this, I would be sued. My business would be bankrupt. My reputation would be destroyed. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. "That is disgusting, Marshall." The voice came from above. I looked up at the balcony. Haley was standing there. She was wearing her oversized sunglasses and holding a green smoothie. She looked down at me with an expression of pure revulsion. "You are digging through the trash," she said. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing that looks? The neighbors are watching." I held up the broken chair leg. My hand was trembling, but my voice was steady. "You broke the chair, Haley. Do you know what this is?" She sighed loud enough for me to hear it from the sidewalk. "It is wood, Marshall. It is dirty old wood that smells like mildew. I told the contractors to clear the room. They cleared the room." "Stop being so dramatic." "Dramatic," I repeated. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. "This is a 17th century antique. It belongs to a client. It is worth more than the car you drive. And you snapped the leg off and threw it in the garbage." Haley laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "Oh, please. Nobody cares about that dusty old junk except you. We are doing you a favor. You are retired. You do not need to be hoarding scraps of wood anymore. You need to focus on being a grandfather, although I do not know if I want my child around someone who digs in dumpsters." The door behind me opened. Terrence stepped out onto the porch. He looked tired. He was wearing his expensive noise-canceling headphones around his neck like a scarf. He saw me standing by the bins. He saw his wife on the balcony. He saw the broken chair leg in my hand. "Dad, come inside," Terrence said. "You are making a scene." I walked up the driveway. I did not stop until I was standing right in front of my son. I held the broken leg up to his face. "Look at this, Terrence. Look at it." He refused to make eye contact. He looked at the driveway. He looked at the sky. He looked anywhere but at me. "It is just a chair, Dad. We will buy you a new one." I felt something break inside me then. It was louder than the snap of the walnut wood. It was the realization that my son was not just weak, he was gone. The boy I had raised, the boy who used to sit on my workbench and watch me carve for hours, had been replaced by this stranger who thought he could buy history at a furniture store. "You cannot buy this, Terrence," I whispered. "This is irreplaceable. And so is my trust." Haley called down from the balcony. Her voice was sharp. "Terrence, tell him to wash his hands before he comes inside. I do not want garbage germs in the house. And tell him that pile of scrap metal needs to be gone by tomorrow. The HOA sends fines if the bins are overflowing." Terrence looked at me. His eyes were pleading. "Please, Dad, just let it go. Haley is nesting. Her hormones are all over the place. She just wants everything perfect for the baby. Can you just put the wood back in the bin and come inside? We can talk about this later." I looked at my son. I looked at the man who was half me and half Etta. I wondered where we went wrong. Maybe I gave him too much. Maybe I shielded him from the hardness of the world so much that he became soft. He stood there in his designer clothes, terrified of his wife, terrified of his father, and terrified of the truth. I did not put the wood back. I took off my shirt right there in the driveway. I used it to wrap the broken leg and the chisels. I would not let them touch the filth of that bin for 1 second longer. "I am not putting it back," I said, "and I am not washing my hands of this. You two have done something today that you cannot undo." I walked past him. I walked into the house that I paid for. I walked into the kitchen that I built. The air conditioning was cold on my bare chest, but the fire in my belly kept me warm. I marched through the living room past the white sofas and the abstract art that Haley had hung over my family photos. I went straight to the guest room. I laid the broken leg on the bed. I laid the chisels next to it. I sat down and looked at the wreckage of my life. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an email notification. The subject line was from the museum curator. He was asking for an update on the chair. He said he was excited to see the progress. I stared at the screen. I could not tell him the truth. Not yet. If I told him now, the lawsuit would hit before I was ready. I needed time. I needed a plan. I looked at the broken leg again. The break was clean. The grain was long. It was a difficult repair, but not impossible. I was Marshall Turner. I had been fixing broken things for 40 years. I could fix the chair, but I could not fix this family. Haley thought she had thrown away trash. She thought she had cleared out space. But what she had actually done was hand me the weapon I would use to destroy her. She had destroyed client property. She had destroyed business assets. In the eyes of the law, she had just committed a crime. I heard footsteps in the hall. Terrence knocked on the door. "Dad, are you okay?" I did not answer. I picked up my phone and opened the camera app. I took a picture of the broken chair leg. Then I took a picture of the chisels covered in yogurt. Then I took a picture of the date and time. "Dad, Haley is really upset," Terrence said through the door. "She thinks you are being aggressive. She says she does not feel safe with you acting like this." I laughed quietly. It was a humorless sound. She did not feel safe. That was Rich. She was the one wielding the wrecking ball. "Tell your wife," I said, my voice low and dangerous through the wood of the door. "Tell her she does not have to worry. I will be very quiet from now on." I heard Terrence sigh and walk away. He thought he had won. He thought I was retreating. He did not know that I was documenting evidence. I spent the next hour cleaning my tools. I used my own toothbrush to scrub the coffee grounds out of the knurling on the handles. I oiled the steel until it gleamed. I treated them with the reverence they deserved. These tools were my ancestors. They had survived Jim Crow. They had survived poverty. They had survived time. They would survive Haley. When I was done, I wrapped them in a clean towel and hid them under the loose floorboard in the closet, the same floorboard where I kept the deed to the house, the deed that did not have Terrence S. name on it. I sat back up and looked at the Louis XIV leg. The break was jagged like a wound. I ran my thumb over the splintered wood. It pricked my skin and a drop of blood welled up. I watched the red droplet sit on the dark walnut. Blood and wood. That was what this house was built on, and blood and wood would be what took it back. I heard the dinner bell ring downstairs. It was a little silver bell that Haley liked to ring instead of calling out. It made me feel like a servant. But I stood up. I put on a fresh shirt. I washed my face. I would go down there. I would sit at their table. I would eat their food. And I would smile. Because the hunt had officially begun, and the prey had no idea they were already in the trap. I walked down the stairs at 6:00 sharp. I had scrubbed my skin with pumice soap until it was raw. I had washed my hair 3 times. I had put on my best Sunday shirt, the one with the starch still stiff in the collar. I did not smell like varnish. I did not smell like sawdust. I smelled like peppermint soap and Old Spice aftershave. I smelled like a man who respects himself and respects his home. The dining room was transformed. The heavy oak table that Etta and I had bought for our 10th anniversary was covered with a white linen tablecloth. The centerpiece was a sprawling arrangement of white lilies that smelled like a funeral parlor. Crystal wine glasses sparkled under the chandelier light. It was beautiful, I suppose, but it felt cold. It felt like a display window in a department store, not a place where a family breaks bread. I saw my son Terrence adjusting the silverware. He was wearing a blazer that looked too tight on him. When he saw me, he stiffened. He looked at the doorway to the kitchen and then back at me. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. "You look nice, Dad," he said, but his voice was thin. "Thank you, son," I said. I pulled out my usual chair, the chair at the head of the table, the chair where I had carved the turkey every Thanksgiving for 30 years. Before I could sit down, Haley glided into the room. She was wearing a silk dress that probably cost more than my first car. She stopped dead when she saw me. Her smile vanished like smoke. "Marshall, what are you doing?" she asked. "I am sitting down for dinner," I said. I smoothed the napkin on the table. "Is that a problem?" She walked over to me and wrinkled her nose. She made a show of sniffing the air around me. She waved her hand in front of her face as if she were wafting away toxic fumes. "Ugh," she groaned. "You smell like chemicals. It is overpowering." I looked at her. I knew I did not smell. I had scrubbed until I bled. "I do not smell like chemicals." "Haley," I said, my voice steady. "I smell like soap." "No, it is that varnish stuff," she insisted. "It is seeping out of your pores, Marshall. I can taste it. It is making me nauseous. The baby cannot be around those fumes." She put a hand on her stomach, the universal trump card. Every time she touched her belly, she won the argument. I looked at Terrence. I waited for him to say something. I waited for him to say, "Dad smells fine, Haley." I waited for him to say, "Let him eat with us." Terrence looked at his shoes. "Maybe it is better if you eat in the kitchen tonight, Dad," he mumbled. "Just for tonight. Haley's mom is coming, and you know how sensitive everyone is right now. The kitchen. They wanted me to eat in the kitchen, like the help, in my own house, in the house where I paid the mortgage, in the house where I taught that boy how to hold a fork." I stood up slowly. I pushed the chair back. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor loud and harsh. "Fine," I said. "I will eat in the kitchen." Haley clapped her hands together lightly. "Perfect. Thank you for being understanding, Marshall. I made a plate for you already. It is on the counter." I walked into the kitchen. The swinging door closed behind me, separating the dining room from the service area. On the granite island there was a plate. It was not the roast duck I could smell cooking in the oven. It was a salad. A small, sad salad with no dressing and a piece of cold grilled chicken that looked like rubber. I sat on a bar stool. The kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I stared at the cold chicken. I felt a lump in my throat that was so hard I could barely swallow. It was not sadness. It was humiliation. Pure, burning humiliation. Then the doorbell rang. I heard the high-pitched greetings. I heard the rustle of expensive fabrics. I heard the voice of Mrs. Vance, Haley's mother. She was a woman who smiled with her teeth but never with her eyes. She was a woman who had asked me at the wedding if I was surprised that Terrence was so articulate. I got off the stool. I moved closer to the swinging door. I did not open it. I just stood there in the shadows and listened. I needed to know what they said when they thought the old workhorse was out to pasture. "Oh, Haley, the house looks divine," Mrs. Vance gushed. "You have done wonders with this place. It used to be so dark and heavy. Now it looks civilized." "Thank you, Mom," Haley replied. "It has been a struggle. You know how it is. We are trying to modernize, but we have obstacles." "Obstacles?" Mrs. Vance asked. "You mean the father? Is he still here?" I leaned closer to the door. My heart was hammering against my ribs. "Yes, he is still here," Terrence said. His voice sounded defensive but weak. "He is eating in the kitchen. He did not feel up to joining us tonight." A lie. My own son lied to protect his pride. He could not admit that his wife had banished his father from the table. Mrs. Vance lowered her voice, but I could still hear her perfectly. "The acoustics in this house are excellent. I built them that way." "You really need to do something about that, Haley," Mrs. Vance said. "A baby needs a calm environment. You cannot have a senile old man wandering around smelling like a factory. It is not healthy, and frankly, it is not safe. What if he leaves the stove on? What if he hurts the baby?" "He is not senile," Mom Terrence said. "He is just set in his ways." "He is difficult," Haley cut in. "He is stubborn, and he is selfish. I tried to turn his workshop into the nursery and he threw a fit. He was digging through the trash today, Mom, like a homeless person. It was mortifying. I heard the clink of wine glasses. I imagined them sipping their expensive red wine that Terrence paid for with the money I gave him." "Well, Mrs. Vance said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "You have to manage him, dear. That is what you do with assets that have become liabilities. You manage them. Have you looked into that facility I told you about?" "Sunset Hills." "We gave him the brochure," Haley said. "I think he is considering it. I told him it would be better for his health. But he is clinging to this house like a barnacle." "You have to be firm," Mrs. Vance said. "It is your house now. Technically. You and Terrence are the future. He is the past. And the past belongs in a museum or a home, not in the master suite." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. "It is your house now." That was what they believed. That was the narrative they were building. They truly believed that because I was old and quiet, I was already dead. They were dividing up the carcass before the animal had even stopped breathing. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I opened the voice recorder app. I pressed the red button. The timer started counting. 1 second, 2 seconds. I need more evidence, I whispered to myself. Keep talking, please keep talking. You know, Haley continued, her voice getting louder as she relaxed. The worst part is the entitlement. He walks around here like he owns the place just because he bought it 40 years ago. He does not understand that equity does not equal authority. We are the ones maintaining it. We are the ones improving it. Maintaining it, I thought. You have not lifted a finger to fix a leak or paint a wall. You hired contractors with my money. And let us be honest, Mrs. Vance said. Her tone dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. It is a cultural thing, dear. They get very attached to land. It is a generational trauma response. But you cannot let his emotional baggage hold you back. You have a family to raise. You need this asset to work for you. If he goes to the home, you could probably build a carriage house in the back, rent it out, create passive income. I froze. They were planning to build over my garden where Etta S. roses were still blooming. They wanted to turn my sanctuary into a rental unit. That is a great idea, Mom, Haley said. I never thought about that. Passive income. That would pay for the nanny. I stopped the recording. My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. I saved the file. I named it Dinner Conversation. I walked back to the island. I looked at the cold chicken. I picked up the fork. I forced myself to take a bite. It tasted like sawdust. It tasted like betrayal. But I chewed it. I swallowed it. I needed the strength. I sat there in the dim light of the kitchen, listening to them laugh and plan my demise. I looked at the granite countertop. I remembered when I installed it. I remembered Terrence sitting right there doing his homework while I grouted the tiles. I had built this kitchen so he would always have a warm place to eat. And now he was in the other room letting strange women plan how to erase me. The door pushed open. I stiffened. It was Terrence. He came in holding an empty wine bottle. He looked at me, and for a second I saw shame in his eyes. Need another bottle, he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. I looked at him. I did not look away. I let the silence stretch out between us. I let it become heavy and suffocating. Is the food good, Dad? He asked weakly. It is cold, Terrence, I said. It is very cold. He flinched. He grabbed a bottle of wine from the rack and turned to leave. He could not stand to be in the same room with his guilt. Terrence, I said. He stopped his hand on the door. Yeah, Dad. Does she know, I asked? Know what? Does she know that the foundation of this house is settling? I lied. Does she know that if you remove the load-bearing walls in the workshop, the roof might collapse? Terrence turned around. His face went pale. What? You never said anything about the foundation. I took a bite of a cucumber slice. I crunched it loudly. I am just a senile old man, Terrence. What do I know? I am just a liability you need to manage. Terrence stared at me. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He realized I had heard them. He realized I knew exactly what was being said in that dining room. Dad, look, it is just talk. Mom Vance is just... She is old-fashioned. Go back to your guests, Terrence, I said. My voice was final. Take the wine. They are thirsty. They have a lot of planning to do. He hesitated for one more second, then he pushed through the door and disappeared. I was alone again, but I was not lonely. I felt a strange sense of clarity. The ambiguity was gone. The hope that maybe I was misunderstanding them was gone. They had declared their intentions. They wanted to liquidate me. They wanted to turn my life's work into passive income. I finished the salad. Every bite was fuel. I drank a glass of tap water. Then I stood up. I took my plate to the sink. I washed it. I dried it. I put it away. I left the kitchen spotless. I walked to the back door. I needed fresh air. I stepped out onto the patio. The night air was cool. I looked at the workshop. The windows were dark. The padlock glinted in the moonlight. I took out my phone again. I dialed a number. It was late, but I knew she would answer. Alana, I said when she picked up. Marshall, she said. Everything all right? No, I said. Nothing is all right. But it is clear. Did you get what we need, she asked. I got it, I said. I have them on tape discussing my eviction. I have them discussing my mental capacity without a medical diagnosis. And I have them plotting to alter the property structure for financial gain. Good, Alana said. That is conspiracy. That proves malicious intent to defraud the trust. Marshall, are you ready for the next step? It is going to be hard. I looked through the window into the dining room. I saw Haley laughing, throwing her head back. I saw Mrs. Vance toasting her glass. I saw Terrence pouring wine, his hands shaking slightly. I am ready, Alana, I said. Tell me what to do. The plan is simple, she said. We give them exactly what they want. We give them the rope. I understand, I said. Tomorrow, she said, start playing the part. Be the old man they think you are. Be forgetful. Be weak. Let them get comfortable. Let them think they have won. I can do that, I said. And Marshall, yes. Do not eat their food again. It might not be safe. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. You think they would? I think people who value property over parents are capable of anything, Alana said. Protect yourself. I hung up the phone. I looked at the house one last time. It looked beautiful from the outside. A perfect American dream. But inside it was rotting. I turned and walked toward the garden. I sat on the stone bench I had built for Etta. I sat there in the dark while the party went on inside. I was the ghost at the feast. But ghosts are dangerous. Ghosts are the only ones who can walk through walls and see the truth. Tomorrow I would start dying. I would start fading away. I would become the confused, helpless old man they wanted. And while they watched me fade, I would be sharpening the axe that would cut them down. The dinner party laughter floated out the window. Laugh while you can, I thought. Enjoy the wine, because the bill is coming, and it is going to be expensive. The silence in the house the next morning was different. It was not the peaceful silence of a library or a church. It was the silence of a prison cell. I woke up at 5 in the morning just like I have for 40 years. I washed my face with cold water. I put on my slippers. I walked over to the small television set in the corner of my room. I like to watch the early morning business news. I like to see how the markets are moving. Even a retired carpenter needs to know the price of lumber and the state of the world. I pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life, but there was no picture. There was only a blue screen with a bouncing box that said no signal. I checked the cable box. The lights were off. I checked the wall outlet. It was plugged in. I picked up the remote and pressed the menu button, but nothing happened. I sighed and reached for my phone. I wanted to check my email. I wanted to see if the museum curator had replied about the chair. I tapped the mail icon. A spinning wheel appeared. It spun, and then a message popped up. Cannot get mail. No internet connection. I looked at the Wi-Fi symbol in the corner of my screen. It was gone. I opened the settings. The network name, Turner House, which I had set up 10 years ago, was gone. In its place was a new network name. It was called The Vance Family, and it was locked. I sat down on the edge of the bed. I felt a tightness in my chest. This was not a technical glitch. This was a siege. In war, the first thing you do is cut the enemy's communication lines. You isolate them. You make them feel like they are alone in the world. Haley was not just a mean girl from the suburbs. She was a tactician. I got dressed slowly. I put on my gray trousers and a button-down shirt. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me in my pajamas looking confused. I walked downstairs. The house was quiet. The air conditioning was humming. I found Terrence in the kitchen. He was making an espresso with that expensive Italian machine they had bought with my money. He looked up when I entered and he flinched. He always flinched now. "Morning, Dad," he said. "The internet is down, Terrence," I said, "and the television is not working." He turned his back to me. He focused on frothing the milk. "Oh yeah, about that. Haley and I looked at the budget last night. The cable bill was getting ridiculous. We decided to cut the cord. You know how it is. We have to save every penny for the baby." I looked at the espresso machine. I looked at the granite countertops. I looked at the smart fridge that cost $3,000. "You cut the cord," I repeated. "But the internet is gone too." "We changed providers," he said quickly. "The new modem is in our bedroom. The signal does not really reach the guest room. The walls are too thick. Old houses, you know. I knew the walls were thick. I built them. I insulated them. But Wi-Fi goes through walls. Wi-Fi does not discriminate. People discriminate. So I am cut off," I said. "Dad, do not be dramatic. You can use the data on your phone. I have a limited plan, Terrence. I use the Wi-Fi for everything." Well, maybe that is a good thing, he said, turning around. He handed me a mug of black coffee. It was lukewarm. Maybe you should spend less time staring at screens. It is bad for your eyes. You should go for walks. Get some fresh air. I took the coffee. I did not drink it. I set it down on the counter. I see, I said. You are worried about my eyes. Just like Haley is worried about my lungs, you two are very concerned about my health lately. We just want what is best for you, Dad. I walked back upstairs. I did not want to argue. Argument implies that there are two sides to listen to. There were no sides here. There was only power and the abuse of power. When I opened the door to my room, I stopped. The room had changed. While I was downstairs for those 5 minutes, someone had been in here. There were boxes stacked against the wall. Big cardboard boxes with Amazon logos on them. There were plastic bins filled with winter coats. There was a vacuum cleaner. There was a broken lamp. I stepped inside. The room felt smaller. The boxes were blocking the path to the window. My reading chair had been pushed into the corner to make room for a stack of old magazines. I turned around. Haley was standing in the doorway. She was smiling. "Oh, good you are back," she said. "Sorry about the mess. We are clearing out the hall closet to make room for the stroller and the car seat. We figured you would not mind storing a few things in here. You have so much extra space for just one person." "Extra space," I said. "This is my bedroom, Haley." "It is the guest room, Marshall," she corrected me. "And guests do not usually complain when the host needs to store a few things. Besides, it is just temporary. Unless you decide to move to Sunset Hills. Then you will have your own room with plenty of storage." She walked in and dropped a pile of towels on my dresser. She covered the picture of Etta. I walked over and moved the towels. I picked up the picture frame and dusted it off with my sleeve. "Do not bring anything else in here," I said. Haley laughed. "It is my house, Marshall. I will put my things where I want. If you do not like it, you know where the door is." She turned and walked away. She left the door open. She wanted me to see her walking down the hallway of my house like she owned every inch of it. I closed the door. I locked it. Not that a lock would stop them. They had keys. They had drills. They had the audacity of youth and greed. I spent the day in that room. I felt like a prisoner. The air was stale. The boxes loomed over me like silent guards. I tried to read a book, but I could not concentrate. I kept thinking about the internet. I needed to email Alana. I needed to send her the recordings. I needed to check the laws on tenant harassment, but I had no signal. I realized then how dependent we become on connection. Without it, I felt invisible. I felt like I had already ceased to exist. Night fell, and with the night came the noise. It started around 7. Cars pulling into the driveway, doors slamming, voices laughing, high heels clicking on the pavement. Haley was having a party. She had not mentioned a party. Usually she would tell me to stay in my room. Today, she did not even bother. She assumed I would stay hidden. She assumed I was too ashamed of my poverty and my old age to show my face. The music started. It was not jazz. It was some heavy electronic beat that shook the floorboards. The bass thumped against my feet like a heartbeat. I sat in my chair in the dark. I did not turn on the lamp. I did not want them to see the light under the door. I wanted to be the ghost they thought I was. I could hear them downstairs. I could hear the pop of champagne corks. I could hear the clinking of silverware. I could smell the food. Roast beef, truffle oil, garlic butter. The smells wafted up the ventilation shafts and taunted me. I sat there with my stomach growling, eating a granola bar I had found in my coat pocket. I heard voices drifting up the stairs. "Your house is amazing, Haley," a woman said. "The architecture is stunning." "Thank you," Haley replied. "We have put so much work into it. It was a wreck when we got it. A total gut job." A wreck. She called my life's work a wreck. She called the hand-carved moldings a gut job. "And where is the father?" the woman asked. "Is he around?" Haley laughed. "Oh, he is upstairs. He is sleeping. He sleeps a lot these days. He is declining pretty fast. We are looking at facilities. It is sad, but it is for the best." "Poor thing," the woman said. "It must be hard for you. Taking care of an invalid while you are pregnant. You are a saint, Haley. A saint." I gripped the arms of my chair. My knuckles turned white. I wanted to go down there. I wanted to march into that living room and scream the truth. I wanted to tell them that I was not an invalid. I was a master craftsman. I was the one who paid for the wine they were drinking. But I stayed seated. Alana had told me to wait. She had told me to let them dig their hole. Then I heard a voice that broke my heart. It was Terrence. He was laughing. It was a loud, booming laugh, the kind of laugh he used to have when we went fishing. "So," Terrence, a man's voice asked, "when do you think you will have the nursery done?" "Soon," Terrence said. "We just have to clear out some old junk from the back. But once that space is open, it is going to be incredible. We are thinking of putting in a skylight." He called my workshop junk. He called my tools junk. I sat there in the dark, and I finally understood. I had been telling myself that Terrence was a victim. I had been telling myself that he was being manipulated by a wicked wife, that he was weak but he loved me. I was wrong. Terrence was not a victim. He was an accomplice. He liked the lifestyle Haley gave him. He liked the rich friends. He liked the compliments. He liked pretending that he had built this life himself. And if erasing his father was the price of admission, he was willing to pay it. He was not afraid of Haley. He was aligned with her. They were a team. And I was the opponent. Tears rolled down my face. They were hot and salty. I let them fall. I let myself feel the pain. It is better to feel pain than to feel nothing. Pain tells you that you are still alive. I stood up. I walked over to the closet. I moved the pile of winter coats Haley had dumped there. I reached up to the top shelf. I pulled down an old cardboard box. Inside was my emergency radio. It was a battery-powered device I kept for hurricane season. It did not need Wi-Fi. It did not need a cable box. It only needed batteries and a signal from the airwaves. I put in fresh batteries. I turned the dial. Static hissed in the quiet room. I turned it, slowly adjusting the antenna. A smooth voice cut through the static. It was the local jazz station. They were playing John Coltrane, Blue Train. I sat back down in my chair. I turned the volume up just enough so I could hear it, but they could not. The saxophone filled the room. It was mournful and strong. It was the sound of endurance. It was the sound of a man who had seen darkness and turned it into art. I closed my eyes. You can cut my cable, I thought. You can lock my Wi-Fi. You can fill my room with your trash, but you cannot cut the music. You cannot cut the history. I listened to the music and I listened to the party downstairs. Two worlds under one roof. One world was loud and drunk and built on lies. The other world was silent and dark and built on truth. They thought they were burying me. They thought they were piling dirt on my grave with every box they shoved into my room. But they forgot one thing. I am a seed. And when you bury a seed, it does not die. It grows. It pushes through the dirt. It cracks the foundation. And it rises toward the sun. I sat there in the dark listening to Coltrane, and I began to plan. Tomorrow I would go to the library. Public Wi-Fi is free. I would send the emails. I would upload the files. Tomorrow I would start the restoration project on the chair. I would do it right here in this cramped room. I would do it by hand. They wanted a war. They had one. But tonight I would just listen. I would let them laugh. I would let them toast to their imaginary future because I knew something they did not. The eviction notice was already being drafted, and it would be delivered not by mail but by the man they called a ghost. I have been a carpenter for 45 years, and the first rule of carpentry is safety. You measure twice and cut once. You never leave a blade exposed. You never leave a machine running. These habits are not just part of my job, they are part of my DNA. I am a man who checks the front door lock 3 times before I go to bed. I am a man who unplugs the toaster after every use. I do not forget things. My mind is as sharp as the Japanese chisels hidden under my floorboards. But they were counting on the world not knowing that. They were counting on the stereotype. Old black man, slow walk, gray hair, silence. To the outside world, those things look like decline. To Haley, those things looked like an opportunity. The morning after the party, I woke up with a clear head. I went downstairs to make my morning tea. The kitchen was a mess from the night before. Wine glasses with red lipstick stains were scattered on the counter. Plates with half-eaten cake were piled in the sink. The smell of stale alcohol hung in the air. I cleaned a small space on the counter. I filled the kettle. I turned the gas burner on. I watched the blue flame circle the bottom of the kettle. When the water boiled, I poured my tea. Then I did what I have done every morning since 1980. I turned the knob to the off position. I felt the mechanical click. I saw the flame die. I wiped the stovetop with a cloth. I hung the cloth on the oven handle. I looked at the knob one last time to be sure. It was vertical. It was off. I took my tea out to the back porch. I wanted to check on my roses. Etta loved those roses. They were the only thing in the backyard that Haley had not paved over or torn down yet. I sat on the bench and sipped my tea. I was thinking about the email I needed to send to Alana. I was thinking about the chair leg I needed to glue. I had been sitting there for maybe 20 minutes when I smelled it. It was not the smell of roses. It was the sharp, acrid smell of burning cotton. I stood up. I looked toward the kitchen window. Dark gray smoke was billowing out through the screen. My heart stopped. I dropped my tea mug. It shattered on the stone patio, but I did not stop to look. I ran. I ran faster than I thought my old legs could carry me. I burst through the back door. The kitchen was filled with smoke. The fire alarm was screaming. On the stove, the cloth I had hung on the oven handle was engulfed in flames. The fire was licking up the side of the cabinets I had built. I did not panic. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from under the sink. I pulled the pin. I aimed. I squeezed. A cloud of white chemical powder covered the stove. The fire hissed and died. I stood there coughing, waving the smoke away. My eyes were stinging. My chest was heaving. Then I heard the scream. "Oh my God, Marshall, what have you done?" Haley was standing in the doorway. She was wearing a silk robe. She had a hand over her mouth and the other hand over her stomach. Terrence was behind her looking terrified. I coughed and pointed at the stove. The cloth caught fire. Haley rushed into the room. She did not ask if I was okay. She did not ask if I was burned. She ran to the stove. She pointed at the knob. "Look at this, Marshall. Look at what you did. You left the gas on. Again." I walked over. I looked at the knob. It was turned to the high position. The gas was hissing softly now that the fire was out. I stared at it. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "No," I said. My voice was raspy from the smoke. I turned it off. I heard it click. Haley turned to Terrence. Her eyes were wide and filled with tears. "Do you see, Terrence? Do you see what I have been telling you? He almost killed us. He almost killed the baby." Terrence walked over to me. He looked at the stove, and then he looked at me. His face was pale. "Dad, the knob is on. It is right there." "Someone turned it back on," I said. I looked straight at Haley. I turned it off. I wiped the stove. I went outside. Haley let out a sob. "Oh my God, he is denying it. He is so confused he does not even remember doing it. Terrence, this is it. I cannot live like this. I cannot sleep at night wondering if he is going to burn the house down." She buried her face in Terrence's chest. Terrence wrapped his arms around her and looked at me with a mixture of pity and anger. "Dad, you have to admit you are getting forgetful. Last week it was the back door. Yesterday you were confused about the internet. Now this. This is dangerous." I looked at the knob again. It was a physical impossibility. I knew I had turned it off. But looking at it now, turned to high, with the white powder covering everything, I felt a cold knot of dread in my stomach. This was not an accident. This was theater. Haley must have come downstairs while I was in the garden. She must have seen the cloth. She must have turned the burner on and waited. She waited until the smoke was thick enough to make a point, but not thick enough to destroy her investment. It was brilliant. And it was evil. "I am not confused, Terrence," I said firmly. "I am being framed." Haley pulled away from Terrence. Her face hardened. "Framed? You think I framed you? You think I would risk my unborn child to frame you? That is exactly what a paranoid person would say. That is a symptom, Terrence. Paranoia. Denial. It is classic dementia." She used the word, dementia. It hung in the air like the smoke. Once that word is spoken, it is hard to take back. It stains everything. It turns every mistake into a symptom. It turns every disagreement into a diagnosis. I went to my room. I did not want to say anything else. Anything I said would be used against me. If I got angry, it was aggression. If I stayed silent, it was confusion. I sat on my bed and waited. I knew the next step was coming. An hour later, Terrence knocked on my door. He came in holding a folder. He sat down on the chair opposite me. He looked like he had been crying, or maybe Haley had been yelling at him. "Dad, we need to talk," he said. I looked at him. I saw the little boy who used to scrape his knees and come to me for a bandage. Now he was here to deliver a wound. "What is it, Terrence?" I asked. He opened the folder. He pulled out a glossy brochure. He slid it across the small table. The cover showed a golden sunset over a generic brick building. Old people were smiling in wheelchairs. The text said, "Sunset Hills Senior Living. Dignity, care, peace." I picked it up. The paper felt slick and expensive, but I knew this place. It was 2 towns over. It was a warehouse for the forgotten. It was where people went to stare at walls until they died. Haley and I think it is time, Terrence said. His voice was shaking. We cannot provide the level of care you need, Dad. Today was a wake-up call. If that fire had spread... I put the brochure down. I do not need care, Terrence. I need you to open your eyes. Your wife turned that stove on. Terrence slammed his hand on the table. Stop it, Dad. Just stop. Haley is pregnant. She is terrified. Why would she do that? You are sick. You just do not know it. That is the nature of the disease. He took a deep breath. Look, I spoke to the manager at Sunset Hills. They have a bed opening up next week. It is a memory care unit. It is secure. You will be safe there. And if I refuse, I asked. Terrence looked down at his hands. If you refuse, Haley says we have to call Adult Protective Services. She says we have to file for emergency guardianship. She says you are a danger to yourself and others. If the court sees the police report from the fire... He did not finish the sentence. He did not have to. If the court declared me incompetent, I would lose everything. I would lose the right to manage the trust. I would lose the right to hire a lawyer. Terrence would become my guardian, and Haley would become the de facto owner of everything I built. This was the checkmate. Or so they thought. I looked at the brochure again. Sunset Hills. It cost $4,000 a month. My pension was only $2,000. How will you pay for this, Terrence? I asked. He hesitated. Well, we would have to use the equity in the house. We would have to refinance. Maybe rent out the main floor. There it was. The money. It always comes back to the money. They needed me out of the way so they could mortgage the house to the hilt. They wanted to strip the copper out of the walls of my life. I looked at Terrence. I saw the fear in him. He believed the lie because it was easier than facing the truth. If he admitted his wife was a sociopath, he would have to leave her. And he was too weak to be alone. I took a deep breath. I made my face soften. I let my shoulders slump. I let my hands tremble just a little. I realized I had to give them what they wanted. I had to let them think the gaslighting had worked. Maybe you are right, I whispered. Terrence looked up. What? I touched my forehead. I do not remember turning it on. I thought I turned it off, but maybe I did not. I have been feeling... foggy lately. Terrence exhaled a long breath. The tension left his shoulders. Oh, Dad, it is okay. It happens. I looked at the brochure. It looks nice, I said. Do they have a garden? Yes, Terrence said eagerly. Yes, they have a big garden. You can sit outside every day. And when would I go? I asked. Next Monday, he said. We can start packing your things. We will keep your tools in storage. Well, we will keep some of them. I nodded slowly. Monday. That gave me 5 days. 5 days to execute the plan. 5 days to turn the trap back on the hunter. Okay, I said. Okay, Terrence. You are a good son. You are doing the right thing. Tears welled up in his eyes. Thank you, Dad. I promise I will visit every Sunday. He stood up and hugged me. It was a Judas hug. He was hugging the father he was about to lock away. When he left the room, I sat there for a long time. The smell of smoke was still on my clothes. I picked up the brochure and tore it in half. Then I tore it into quarters. They thought I was foggy. They thought I was broken. They did not know that a fire does not just destroy. A fire also hardens steel. Haley had made a mistake, a fatal mistake. By threatening me with legal guardianship, she had forced my hand. I could no longer just defend myself. I had to destroy them. I reached under the mattress and pulled out the folder of documents Alana had given me. I found the page I was looking for. It was a medical affidavit. I needed a doctor to certify that I was of sound mind. I would go to my own doctor tomorrow. I would take a cognitive test. I would get the results on paper, and then I would go to the bank. Haley wanted to claim I was incompetent so she could control the assets, but she forgot one detail. The trust documents had a clause, a poison pill clause. If the primary beneficiary, me, is deemed incompetent by a court, the assets do not go to the secondary beneficiary, Terrence. They are immediately liquidated and donated to the United Negro College Fund. I laughed softly in the quiet room. If they succeeded in proving I was crazy, they would inherit absolutely nothing. But I was not going to let it get that far. I was going to let them drive me to the gates of Sunset Hills. I was going to let them think they had won. And then I was going to burn their world down, not with gas and a match, but with the cold, hard truth. I heard footsteps in the hall. It was Haley. She stopped outside my door. She did not knock. She just stood there listening. She wanted to hear if I was crying. I stayed silent. I let her have her moment. Enjoy it, Haley, I thought. Enjoy the silence, because the storm is coming, and you are standing right in the path of the hurricane. I lay down on the bed and closed my eyes. I recited the names of my tools to keep my mind sharp. Chisel, plane, saw, hammer, hammer. Yes, I would be the hammer, and they were about to find out what it feels like to be the nail. I told Terrence I was going to the pharmacy to pick up my blood pressure medication. He did not even look up from his tablet. He just waved his hand and said, "Bring back a gallon of oat milk while you are out." He did not offer to drive me. He did not ask if I had money. He just gave me an order like I was a servant. That was fine. Servants are invisible. Servants are underestimated. I put on my old beige windbreaker and walked out the door. I walked with a stoop until I turned the corner. As soon as I was out of sight of the house, I straightened my back. I walked 2 blocks to the bus stop. I have a truck, but I could not risk taking it. Haley tracks the mileage. She says she wants to make sure I am not driving aimlessly and wasting gas. The truth is, she wants to know where I am every second of the day. The bus ride to downtown Atlanta took 40 minutes. I sat in the back. I watched the city roll by. I saw neighborhoods that used to be black communities now filled with coffee shops and yoga studios. I saw the history of my people being painted over and renovated just like my workshop. But some foundations are too deep to be dug up. I got off at Peachtree Street. I walked into the lobby of the Hart Building. The security guard asked for my ID. I showed him my driver's license. He looked at me, and then he looked at the name on the directory. Hart and Associates. "You have an appointment?" he asked. "I do not need one," I said. "I am family." I took the elevator to the 20th floor. The doors opened and the smell hit me. It smelled like old leather and lemon polish. It smelled like justice. The receptionist tried to stop me, but then a door opened down the hall. Alana Hart stepped out. She is 72 years old, but she stands as straight as a judge's gavel. She was wearing a red power suit that looked like armor. She saw me, and her face softened. "Marshall," she said. She did not ask why I was there. She knew. She walked over and hugged me. She smelled like lavender, just like Etta used to. For a second, I wanted to break down. I wanted to weep into her shoulder and tell her how much I missed my wife. I wanted to tell her how lonely it was to live in a house full of people who wished you were dead, but I held it together. "I am a Turner. We do not break." "Come inside," she said. We sat in her office. It was a corner office with a view of the entire city. I could see the world from up here. Down on the street, I was just an old man. Up here, I was a client. I was a man with rights. I told her everything. I told her about the workshop. I told her about the lock. I told her about the trash. I told her about the dinner party and the cold chicken. And then I told her about the fire. When I finished, Alana took off her glasses. She rubbed the bridge of her nose. She did not look shocked. She looked angry. A quiet, terrifying anger. "They are building a case, Marshall," she said. "It is textbook. First they isolate you, then they demean you. Then they manufacture a crisis to prove incompetence. The fire was the escalation. They are not waiting for nature to take its course. They are accelerating the timeline." She stood up and walked to a large safe in the corner of the room. She spun the dial. Click, click, click. The heavy door swung open. She pulled out a thick file folder. It was labeled Etta's Legacy Trust. She placed it on the desk between us. "Do you remember what Etta said when we drafted this?" she asked. I nodded. "She said that love is blind, but the law must have eyes." Alana opened the file. She pointed to a paragraph on the 3rd page. "The house is not yours, Marshall. Not technically. You transferred the deed to the Turner Restoration LLC 10 years ago to protect it from liability lawsuits. And the LLC is owned by this trust. You are the sole trustee. You are the manager. You have 100% control. I know this," I said. "But if they declare me incompetent, Terrence becomes the guardian. He takes control of me. And if he controls me, he controls the trust." Alana smiled. It was a sharp smile. A wolf smile. That is what they think, she said. But Etta was smarter than that. And so was I. Look at Clause 14. I looked. The legal language was dense, but Alana translated it for me. This is the poison pill, she said. It states that if the primary beneficiary, which is you, is declared mentally incompetent or is placed under court-ordered guardianship, the assets of the trust are immediately frozen. The management of the LLC does not pass to the next of kin. Instead, the LLC is dissolved and all assets, including the real estate, are to be liquidated. The proceeds are then donated in full to the United Negro College Fund. I stared at the paper. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my chest. So if they prove I am crazy, I asked, if they succeed in locking me away, they get nothing. Zero, Alana said. They will be evicted by the executor of the charity. They will be homeless. And you will be taken care of by the separate insurance annuity we set up, which they cannot touch. It was brilliant. It was Etta reaching out from the grave to protect me. She knew Terrence was weak. She knew he might be influenced. She had built a wall around me that I had forgotten existed. But Marshall, Alana said, her voice turning serious. We do not want it to get that far. We do not want you in a home. We want you in your house. We want to expose them before they file the papers. We need to prove that their claims of dementia are fraudulent. We need to prove abuse. She opened a drawer in her desk. She pulled out a small black device. It was no bigger than a pack of gum. This is a high-definition voice recorder, she said. It has a battery life of 40 hours. It activates on sound. I took it. It felt cold and heavy in my hand. I have been recording them on my phone, I said. That is good, she said. But this is better. I want you to wear this at all times. I want you to capture the threats. I want you to capture the lies. And most importantly, I want you to capture the financial coercion. She pulled out another document. It was a bank statement. I had my forensic accountant look at the joint checking account you share with Terrence, she said. The one you use for household expenses. I felt a knot in my stomach. I knew what was coming. It is empty, Marshall, she said gently. There was $40,000 in there 6 months ago. Today there is less than $500. I closed my eyes. $40,000. That was my savings. That was the money for the roof repair. That was the money for my medical bills. Where did it go? I whispered. Alana slid a spreadsheet across the desk. Nordstrom, Tesla Service Center, 5-star hotels in Miami, fine dining, and a $20,000 transfer to a contractor for renovation services. They spent my life savings on clothes and cars, I said, and they used my own money to pay the contractor to destroy my workshop. Alana leaned forward. Her eyes were piercing. Marshall, I have to ask you this, and I need you to be honest with yourself. Why did you add him to the account? You are a businessman. You know the risks. Why did you give him access? I looked at the spreadsheet. I looked at the list of transactions that detailed the theft of my dignity. I took a deep breath. The air in the office felt thin. Because he is my son, Alana, I said. My voice cracked. Because when Etta died, I looked at him and I saw the only thing I had left. I wanted him to feel like a man. I wanted him to feel like a partner. I thought if I treated him with trust, he would become trustworthy. I looked up at her. I was wrong, I said. I trusted the blood. But the blood is corrupted. Alana reached across the desk and covered my hand with hers. You were not wrong to love your son Marshall, she said. He was wrong to betray that love. And now we are going to make him accountable. She stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. Here is the plan, she said. You are going to go back there. You are going to continue to play the role. You are going to let them think you are fading. You are going to agree to go to Sunset Hills. I nodded. I understand. But before you go, she said, turning back to me, you are going to ask for one thing. You are going to ask them to sign a contract. Tell them you want to gift them the house officially before you enter the home. Tell them you want to sign a deed of gift, but that gives them everything I said. Alana smiled again. No, Marshall. I will draw up the papers. It will look like a deed. It will smell like a deed. But the language inside will be a confession. If they sign it, they are admitting that they are accepting the property in exchange for placing you in a facility. That proves quid pro quo. That proves they are trading your freedom for real estate. That is elder abuse. and that is a felony. I stood up. I put the recorder in the breast pocket of my windbreaker. I buttoned it. It sat right over my heart. "You want me to trap them," I said. "I want you to let them trap themselves," Alana said. "They are greedy, Marshall, and greed makes people blind. They will not read the fine print. They will only see the dollar signs." I walked to the door. I felt different than I had when I walked in. I was no longer a victim. I was an operative. I was a soldier on a mission. Marshal Alana called out. I turned back. "Be careful," she said. "When an animal is cornered, it bites, but when a predator thinks it has won, it gets sloppy. Wait for the sloppiness." I nodded. I left the office. I took the elevator down. I walked out into the sunshine. I went to the pharmacy. I bought the oat milk. I bought the blood pressure medicine. I caught the bus back to the suburbs. I walked the 2 blocks to my house. When I opened the front door, the house smelled of fresh paint. They were painting the hallway, a bright, stark white. They were erasing the warm yellow that Etta had chosen. Terrence was in the living room watching football on the big screen. Haley was on her laptop looking at baby clothes. "Did you get the milk?" Terrence asked without looking away from the game. I held up the plastics bag. "I got it," I said. "Good," Haley said. "Put it in the fridge, and Marshall, try not to slam the door. I have a headache." I walked into the kitchen. I put the milk away. I reached into my pocket and felt the small, hard shape of the recorder. I slid the switch to the on position. A tiny red light blinked once and then went dark, indicating it was recording. I walked back into the living room. "I have been thinking," I said. My voice was soft. I made it sound tired. Terrence muted the TV. He looked at me. "What have you been thinking, Dad?" "I have been thinking about Sunset Hills," I said. "I think you are right. I think it is time. I do not want to be a burden anymore." Haley looked up from her computer. Her eyes lit up. She closed the laptop. "Really, Marshall," she said, "you are making the right decision. It is going to be so much better for you." "I want to do it properly," I said. "I want to make sure you two are taken care of. I want to sign the house over to you." "Before I go." Terrence and Haley exchanged a look. It was a look of pure, unadulterated greed. It was the look of 2 people who had just won the lottery. "That is very generous of you, Dad," Terrence said. "I just need a few days," I said, "to get the papers ready." "Take all the time you need," Haley said sweetly. Her headache was suddenly gone. "We can help you pack." I looked at them. I looked at the smiles on their faces. They thought they were looking at a defeated old man. They did not know they were looking at their executioner. "I am going to take a nap," I said. "I am very tired." "Sleep well," Marshal Haley said. I walked up the stairs. I felt the recorder warm against my chest. Every word. I had every word. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for them to walk into it. The next morning, the house smelled of victory. Not mine. Theirs. I walked down the stairs, gripping the banister like an old man who fears a fall. In my other hand, I held the envelope that Alana had prepared. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope. Heavy. Official. It looked like a surrender treaty. And in a way it was. I was surrendering my pride to buy back my freedom. Haley and Terrence were already at the dining table. They were not eating. They were waiting. They looked like vultures sitting on a branch waiting for the animal to stop twitching. When I entered the room, Haley sat up straighter. She pushed her coffee cup aside. Her eyes went immediately to the envelope in my hand. "Good morning, Marshall," she said. Her voice was bright and artificial. "Did you sleep well?" I slept fine. I lied. I had not slept at all. I had spent the night staring at the ceiling, rehearsing my lines. I had spent the night praying that Alana was right about the blindness of greed. I walked to the table. I did not sit down. I stood there, slightly hunched over, letting my hand tremble just enough to be noticeable. "I have the papers," I said. "The papers, My voice was low. I made it sound defeated. Terrence stood up. He pulled out a chair for me. "Here, Dad. Sit down. You look tired." I sat. I placed the envelope on the table. I kept my hand on it for a moment, feigning hesitation. "I thought about what we discussed," I said. "About Sunset Hills. About the future." And Haley leaned forward. And I think you are right," I said. "I cannot take care of this place anymore. It is too much for me, and if I am going to the home, I want to make sure you two are secure. I do not want the state taking the house for fees. I want it to stay in the family." Haley let out a breath she had been holding. Oh, Marshall, that is so sensible. That is exactly what we want too, to keep the legacy alive. Legacy. She used that word without knowing what it meant. Legacy is not what you own. Legacy is what you build. She had never built anything in her life except debt and resentment. I opened the envelope. I pulled out the document Alana had drafted. It was titled Deed of Gift. The font was large and impressive, but the text in the middle was where the trap lay. Alana had written it brilliantly. The contract stated that I, Marshall Turner, was transferring the property to Terrence and Haley Vance strictly on the condition that they assume full responsibility for my care at the Sunset Hills facility. It stated that this transfer was a direct payment for their promise of care. To a layman, it looked like a standard agreement. To a lawyer or a judge, it was a confession. It was proof of a quid pro quo. I give you house. You put me away. It stripped away the defense that they were acting in my best interest. It proved they were acting for profit. I slid the document across the table. I signed my part, I said, pointing to my shaky signature at the bottom. I just need you two to sign as the recipients. Once you sign this, the house is yours. I will go to Sunset Hills on Monday. Haley grabbed the pen before the paper even stopped moving. She did not read the first paragraph. She did not read the second paragraph. She flipped straight to the back page. She was looking for the signature line. She was looking for the gold. Honey, Terrence said, his voice a little anxious. Maybe we should read it first. Haley shot him a look that could cut glass. It is a standard deed, Terrence. Your father had it drawn up. Do you not trust your own father? She looked at me. You used a lawyer, right, Marshall? Yes, I said. I used a lawyer. See, Haley said. It is legal. Just sign it, Terrence, so we can get started. We have so much to do before the baby comes. She signed her name. Haley Vance. The loops of her letters were large and aggressive. She pressed down so hard on the pen that I could hear the tip scratching the paper. She was carving her claim into my life. She pushed the paper to Terrence. Sign it, she ordered. Terrence looked at me. He looked at the document. For a second, I saw hesitation. I saw a flicker of conscience. He knew this was wrong. He knew he was signing his father away. Dad, he said softly, are you sure about this? I looked him in the eye. I am sure, Terrence. I just want peace. He nodded. He picked up the pen. He signed. Terrence Turner. It was done. They had just signed a document admitting that they were trading my liberty for property. They had just handed me the evidence I needed to charge them with financial exploitation of the elderly. I reached out and took the document back. I will keep this safe, I said. I will give it to the administrator at Sunset Hills on Monday when I check in. They need it for their files. Haley frowned. Why do not we keep it, Marshall? We have a safe. It is part of the admission process, I lied smoothly. They need the original. I will make you a copy later. Haley shrugged. She did not care about the paper anymore. She cared about the result. She had won. The house was hers. Well, she said, clapping her hands together. That settles it. Since the house is officially ours, now we do not have to wait anymore. Wait for what I asked. Haley pulled her phone out of her pocket. She dialed a number. You can come in now, she said into the phone. We are ready. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. Come in. Who was she talking to? The front doorbell rang. It was not a polite ring. It was a long, impatient buzz. Terrence stood up. That must be them. He went to the door. I heard heavy boots on the hardwood floor. I heard the sound of men talking, rough voices. Two men walked into the dining room. They were wearing tool belts and dusty work boots. They looked like demolition men, because they were. Morning, Mom, the tall one said to Haley. We got the sledgehammers in the truck. You want us to start on that wall now? Yes, Haley said. She stood up and smiled a smile that was all teeth. Start immediately. I want that wall gone by lunch. We need to open up the space. The baby needs light. I sat frozen in my chair. That wall. She was talking about the wall between the living room and the workshop, the load-bearing wall. The wall where Etta had hung our wedding photos for 30 years. You are doing it now, I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. Why wait? Haley said. You are leaving on Monday. The noise will not bother you. Besides, we want you to see the progress before you go. We want you to see how beautiful it is going to be. She was not just evicting me, she was erasing me. She wanted me to watch my history turn to rubble. The workmen walked past me. They did not look at me. To them, I was just furniture. They walked toward the back of the house, toward the door that led to my workshop. I stood up. I followed them. I had to see it. I had to witness the crime. Haley and Terrence followed me. Haley was practically skipping. The tall workman took a sledgehammer from his partner. He sized up the wall. He tapped it a few times, finding the studs. "Ready, ma'am?" he asked. "Do it," Haley said. The man swung the hammer. Crack! The sound was like a gunshot in the enclosed space. Plaster flew. Dust billowed into the air. A jagged hole appeared in the smooth yellow paint. My heart lurched. I felt that blow in my own ribs. He swung again. Crash! More plaster fell. The wooden laths behind the plaster splintered. I could see into the workshop now. I could see the darkness of my sanctuary being breached by the violence of their greed. Terrence flinched with every blow. He looked pale. "Dad, maybe you should go upstairs," he said. "You do not need to watch this." "No," Haley said, grabbing Terrence's arm. "Let him watch. He needs to see that change is good. Look, Marshall, look how much bigger the room feels already. It breathes now." It did not breathe. It bled. The men kept swinging. Dust filled the air, coating the furniture, coating the floor, coating my skin. I tasted the gypsum. It tasted like chalk and dry rot. I looked at the workshop. I saw my workbench covered in plastic sheets. I saw the shadow of the Louis XIV chair in the corner. "Stop." I wanted to scream. "You are destroying the structural integrity of the house. You are destroying my soul." But I bit my tongue. I bit it so hard I tasted copper. I had to let them do this. I had to let them destroy the wall, because every swing of that hammer was adding another $1,000 to the damages I would claim. Every swing was another nail in their legal coffin. Alana had said, "Give them the rope." This was the rope. They were hanging themselves with every brick they knocked down. I watched for 10 minutes. By then, there was a hole big enough to walk through. The separation between my work and my life was gone. The dust was settling on Haley's expensive silk blouse, but she did not care. She was intoxicated by destruction. "It is perfect," she whispered. "It is going to be a masterpiece." I turned around. I could not watch anymore. Not because I was weak, but because I was afraid I would kill them if I stayed. "I am going to my room," I said. "The dust is bad for my chest." Haley waved her hand dismissively. "Go ahead, Marshall. Start packing. You have a lot of boxes to fill." I walked up the stairs. The sound of the sledgehammer followed me. Bam! 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 It shook the railing under my hand. It shook the pictures on the wall. I went into my room. I closed the door. I locked it. I shoved a towel under the crack to keep the dust out. I went to the closet. I pulled up the loose floorboard. I took out the camera. I checked the recorder in my pocket. It was still running. It had captured everything. The signing of the deed, the order to destroy the wall, the joy in Haley's voice as she tore my house apart. I sat on the bed. I felt old. I felt tired. The adrenaline of the signing had faded, leaving only a cold, hollow ache. I looked at the picture of Etta. "They broke the wall, Etta," I whispered. "They broke the wall where you hung the calendar." I wiped a tear from my cheek. It left a streak of white dust on my skin. "But they signed the paper," I said to the empty room. "They signed it, Etta." They walked right into the trap. Downstairs, the noise stopped for a moment. Then I heard Haley's voice laughing. She was probably standing in the rubble, envisioning her white Scandinavian furniture. I lay back on the pillow. Let them laugh. Let them break the walls. Monday was coming, and on Monday the hammer was going to swing the other way. I reached for my phone. I had no signal, but I typed a draft email to Alana. Subject: the deed is signed. Body. They signed the quid pro quo. They started demolition immediately. Structural damage is significant. Proceed with the filing. I am ready. I saved the draft. I listened to the house shaking beneath me. It was groaning in pain. Hold on, I thought. Just hold on, old girl. We are almost there. I closed my eyes and imagined the courtroom. I imagined the look on Haley's face when the judge read the document she had just signed. I imagined the silence. That silence would be sweeter than any music. But for now I had to endure the noise. I had to endure the dust. I was a prisoner in a collapsing fortress, but I held the key to the exit. And I was taking the fortress with me when I left. The dust from the demolished wall had barely settled on the floorboards when Haley appeared at my bedroom door. She did not knock. In her mind, I was already a guest in her house, and guests do not have the right to privacy. She held a laptop in one hand and a notepad in the other. She looked like a tax auditor who had just smelled blood. Marshall, she said, stepping into the room. We need to finalize the financial transition. I sat on the edge of my bed. I was folding my shirts into a suitcase. It was a performance. I was packing for a trip I had no intention of taking. I looked up at her. The financial transition, I repeated slowly. I thought signing the deed was the transition. That was the property, she said impatiently. I am talking about the liquidity. Sunset Hills requires a substantial deposit and proof of funds for your monthly care. Since Terrence and I are taking legal guardianship, we need to consolidate the accounts. We need access to your retirement savings. I looked at Terrence, who was standing behind her in the hallway. He was leaning against the doorframe, picking at his fingernails. He could not look me in the eye. He knew exactly what this was. They had the house, but the house was not cash. You cannot spend a house at the mall. You cannot use a house to pay off credit card debt. And I knew from Alana S.'s report that they were drowning in debt. They needed my cash. They needed the money I had saved for 30 years of sanding and varnishing and sweating. They assumed I had a fortune tucked away. After all, I never bought new cars. I never took vacations. I lived simple. To a greedy mind, simplicity looks like hoarding. I put down the shirt I was folding. I stood up. My knees popped. I do not have much. Haley, I said. I am just a carpenter. Haley laughed. It was a sharp, incredulous sound. Oh, please, Marshall, do not play poor with me. We know you have the insurance money from Etta. We know you have the pension. Terrence said you have been saving since 1980. She walked over to the small desk in the corner of the room. She opened her laptop and set it down. Log in, she commanded. Log into your primary savings account. We need to transfer the balance to our joint control account before the bank closes. It is for your own protection, Marshall. We do not want you forgetting the password and locking us out. I walked over to the desk. I looked at the screen. The bank login page was waiting. I felt the recorder in my pocket pressing against my ribs. It was running. This was the moment Alana had warned me about. The moment they would try to strip me clean. I sat down at the chair. I put on my reading glasses. I made my hands shake. I typed one number. Then I deleted it. I typed another. Come on, Marshall. Haley snapped. It is not nuclear physics. Just type the password. I am trying, I said softly. My memory is not what it used to be. Remember. She rolled her eyes. Terrence, come help him. He is stalling. Terrence walked into the room. Dad just typed the code. The one you use for the ATM. I typed the code. 1, 9, 5, 8. The year Etta and I met. I hit the enter key. The screen spun for a second. Haley leaned over my shoulder. I could smell her perfume. It was expensive and cloying. She was practically vibrating with anticipation. She was already spending the money in her head. She was probably imagining a new Tesla or a vacation to the Maldives. The screen refreshed. The account summary appeared. Total available balance, $50.42. The silence in the room was absolute. It was heavier than the air before a tornado. Haley stared at the screen. She blinked. She leaned closer until her nose almost touched the glass. What is this? She whispered. That is my savings account, I said. She turned to me slowly. Her face was not pretty. The mask of the concerned daughter-in-law had fallen off completely. Underneath was pure, unadulterated rage. $50, she said. Her voice was trembling. $50. Is this a joke? Where is the rest of it? That is all of it, I said. I spent it. Spent it, she screamed. You spent it. On what? You wear the same clothes for 10 years. You drive a truck that belongs in a junkyard. You eat leftovers. Where is the money, Marshall? I looked at her calm and steady. I spent it on the house, I said. I spent it on the roof. I spent it on the new copper plumbing. I spent it on Terrence S. college tuition. I spent it on your wedding. Money does not last forever, Haley. She stood up so fast the chair knocked over. You are lying, she shrieked. You are a liar. You have hidden it. I know you have hidden it. You selfish old man. You knew we needed this money. You knew the baby was coming. I picked up the chair and set it upright. I gave you the house, Haley, I said. The house is worth $1 million. Is that not enough? No, it is not enough, she yelled. We cannot pay the bills with a house, Marshall. We need cash. We have... She stopped herself. She almost admitted they had debts. She almost admitted they were broke. She took a deep breath. Her hands were balled into fists at her sides. Her face was red. A vein was throbbing in her neck. "You are useless," she hissed. "You are absolutely useless. We took you in. We tolerated your smell. We tolerated your junk. And this is how you repay us. By being a burden. By being a broken down old man," Haley Terrence said softly, trying to calm her down. "Shut up, Terrence," she spun on him. "This is your fault. You said he was loaded. You said the restoration business was a gold mine. You lied to me. You are just as useless as he is." Then she turned back to me, and this was the moment. This was the moment the hate that had been simmering under the surface for 3 years finally boiled over. "You know what, Marshall," she said, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You are disgusting. I have always hated living here with you. I hate your dark skin against my white sheets. I hate your nappy hair on my pillows. I hate your cheap, poverty-stricken mindset. You are just a stingy old black miser who wants to drag everyone down into the dirt with him." I felt the words hit me like physical blows. She had finally said it. She had finally brought color into the room. She had confirmed what I had always known but never wanted to believe. She did not just hate me because I was old. She hated me because I was black and I was proud and I owned something she wanted. "Why do not you just die?" She spat the words out. "Why do not you just do us all a favor and die, Marshall? Stop breathing. Stop eating. Stop taking up space. Go to that nursing home and rot. Because that is all you are good for. Rotting." She grabbed the laptop and slammed it shut. "Come on, Terrence," she ordered. "We are leaving. I cannot breathe the air in this room. It smells like failure." She stormed out of the room, her heels hammered on the floorboards like gunshots. Terrence stood there. He looked at me. His face was gray. He had heard his wife wish death upon his father. He had heard his wife use racial slurs against his own heritage. "Dad," he whispered. "She did not mean that. She is just hormonal. She is stressed about the money." I looked at my son. I looked at the man who shared my blood, the man I had named after a king. She meant every word, Terrence, I said. "And the saddest part is you agree with her. You think I failed you because I did not leave you a pile of cash to waste. You think I owe you my life." "I do not think that, Dad," he said, but his eyes were lying. "Go," I said. "Go follow your wife. She has the keys to the car. She has the keys to your life. Do not make her wait." Terrence hesitated for 1 second, just 1 second. Then he turned and walked away. He followed the woman who despised his father. He chose his side. I listened to their footsteps fade down the stairs. I heard the front door slam. I heard the car engine start and roar away. I was alone in the room. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the recorder. The little red light was still blinking. I stopped the recording. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from the sheer violence of her words. "A stingy old black miser. Die so we can be free." I sat down on the bed. I took a deep breath. I let the pain wash over me. It hurt. It hurt more than the time I broke my ribs falling off a ladder. It hurt because it was not just an insult. It was a revelation of the rot at the core of my family. But then I remembered the $50. I smiled, a small cold smile. They did not know about the other account, the account under the LLC, the account that held the profits from 40 years of hard work, the account that Alana and I had secured months ago. They thought the $50 was a sign of my failure. They did not know it was a sign of my preparation. I looked at the recorder in my hand. "You just gave me the golden ticket, Haley," I whispered to the empty room. In the state of Georgia, wishing death upon an elder while legally responsible for their care is grounds for immediate revocation of guardianship. Using racial slurs and verbal abuse is grounds for a restraining order, and admitting that you only want the guardianship to access funds is fraud. I had it all. I stood up, I went to the closet, I pulled up the floorboard again, I placed the recorder next to the deed and the photos of the broken chair. My evidence box was full. I looked around the room. The dust was still settling. The boxes were still stacked against the wall. "You want me to rot," I thought. "You want me to disappear." I walked to the window. I watched their car disappear down the street. "I am not going to rot, Haley. I am going to bloom, and you are going to be the fertilizer." I went back to the desk. I opened the drawer. I took out a piece of stationery. I picked up my fountain pen. I needed to write a letter. A letter to the bank. a letter to the insurance company, and a letter to the nursing home. I was canceling my reservation at Sunset Hills. Marshall Turner was not going anywhere. But first, I had to survive the weekend. They were desperate now. They had no money, and they had a house they could not sell because my name was still technically on the title until the filing was complete. They were cornered animals. Tonight they would come back. Tonight they would be dangerous. I went to the door. I went to the safe. I engaged the deadbolt. I wedged a chair under the handle. I would sleep lightly tonight, but I would sleep with a clear conscience. Because for the first time in 3 years, I knew exactly who they were. And I knew exactly what I had to do. $50. That was the price of their soul. And they had sold it cheap. Saturday morning arrived not with sunlight, but with the chaotic noise of a commercial invasion. I woke up to the sound of a delivery truck backing into my driveway. The beep, beep, beep of the vehicle was the alarm clock for the day that would end my life as I knew it and begin a new one. I got out of bed and walked to the window. The front lawn was being transformed. A team of workers was setting up a massive white tent. There were arches made of thousands of blue and white balloons. There were life-sized cutouts of storks and teddy bears. It looked like a carnival for the rich and tasteless. This was the day of the baby shower, the grand reveal. The day Haley would officially present herself as the matriarch of the Turner estate to all of Atlanta high society. I watched them trample my grass. One of the workers hammered a stake straight into the bed of hydrangeas I had planted for Etta on our 30th anniversary. I felt a twitch in my jaw, but I did not yell. Let them trample the flowers. Today I was going to pull the weeds. I washed my face and dressed in my old work clothes. I needed to maintain the illusion for just a few more hours. I walked out into the hallway. The house smelled of expensive catering, mini quiches, smoked salmon, champagne. It was a stark contrast to the cold chicken and salad I had been fed for weeks. Haley was standing at the top of the stairs directing traffic. She was wearing a blue silk maternity dress that shimmered in the light. Her hair was done up in an intricate bun. She looked like a queen surveying her kingdom. When she saw me, her face tightened. She checked her watch. "Marshall," she said, "you are still here." "Good morning, Haley," I said. "I am just getting some coffee." "No coffee," she said, blocking my path. "The caterers are setting up the bar in the kitchen. I do not want you in there getting in their way. You know how clumsy you have been lately." "I am not clumsy, Haley." She ignored me. "Look, Marshall, we need to talk about the schedule for today. This party is very important to us. Terrence's boss is coming. The mayor's wife might stop by. It is a very exclusive guest list." I stood there waiting for the blow. "And the thing is," she continued examining her manicured fingernails, "we just do not think it is a good idea for you to be here. You know, with your condition, it might be overwhelming for you, all the noise and the people, and frankly, we do not want you to feel embarrassed if you have an episode." She meant she did not want to be embarrassed by the presence of her black father-in-law in his own house. She did not want the old man she had labeled as demented walking around proving her wrong. She wanted a prop, not a person. And since I was a prop that did not fit the decor, she wanted me in storage. "So what do you want me to do?" I asked. Haley reached into her purse. She pulled out a $20 bill. She held it out to me like she was tipping a valet. "Here," she said. "Why do not you go to the movies? Or go to the park? Just go somewhere else. Stay away until at least 6 o'clock. By then, the guests will be gone and you can come back to your room." I looked at the bill. $20, the price of my dignity. She was evicting me from my own home for the day so she could celebrate the theft of it. I took the money. I had to play the part. "Thank you, Haley," I said, lowering my head. "That sounds nice." "I like the movies." She smiled a tight, victorious smile. "Good. Make sure you leave by 11. I do not want you here when the first guests arrive." She turned and walked away shouting orders at the florist. "Make sure the lilies are in the foyer. No, not there. By the grand staircase." I walked back into my room. I closed the door. I looked at the $20 bill in my hand. I crumbled it up and threw it in the trash can. I was not going to the movies. I went to the closet. I reached all the way to the back behind the old coats and the boxes they had forced me to store. I pulled out a garment bag. It was covered in a layer of dust, but the zipper was still strong. I unzipped it. Inside was my charcoal gray 3-piece suit. It was not a suit from a department store. It was bespoke, made by a tailor on Savile Row in London back when Etta and I took our one big trip to Europe in '95. It was wool, timeless, and cut to fit a man who stood tall. I laid the suit on the bed. I pulled out my ironing board. For the next hour, I engaged in a ritual. I filled the iron with water. I waited for the steam to rise. I pressed the trousers until the crease was sharp enough to cut paper. I pressed the shirt until the white cotton gleamed like snow. I pressed the vest. I pressed the jacket. The heat and the steam filled the small room. It was a cleansing ritual. With every pass of the iron, I was smoothing out the wrinkles of the last 3 months. I was steaming away the insults. I was pressing away the shame. I am not a senile old man, I whispered to the rhythm of the steam hiss. I am Marshall Turner. I am a master craftsman. I am a father. I am a husband. And I am the owner of this house. I went to my shoebox. I pulled out my black Oxfords. They were scuffed from neglect. I sat down and opened the tin of polish. The smell of wax and turpentine filled my nose. It was a smell I loved. It smelled like care. I worked the polish into the leather. Circular motions, patience, friction, heat. Terrence had forgotten these lessons. He bought cheap shoes that fell apart in 6 months and threw them away. I bought good shoes and kept them for 20 years. He thinks everything is disposable, I thought. He thinks I am disposable. I buffed the shoes until I could see my own reflection in the toe. The face looking back at me was not the face of a victim. It was the face of a warrior putting on his war paint. At 10:45, Terrence knocked on my door. "Dad," he called out. "Are you leaving?" "People are starting to arrive soon." "I am packing a bag, Terrence," I answered through the door. "I will be out of your hair in a minute." "Good, thanks, Dad. Just use the back door, okay? We do not want you walking through the front display." The back door, the servant's entrance. I stood up. I hung the suit carefully on the back of the door. I would not put it on yet. If I walked out wearing it, they would know something was wrong. I had to leave as the pauper and return as the king. I put on my windbreaker and my old cap. I grabbed a small duffel bag. Inside, I put the suit, the shirt, the shoes, and the tie. I also put in the evidence box, the recorder, the deed, the photos. I opened the door. The hallway was empty. I could hear music playing downstairs. A string quartet. They had hired a string quartet to play in the living room where I used to watch Jeopardy! I walked down the back stairs. I slipped out through the kitchen. The caterers were too busy arranging shrimp cocktails to notice the old man slipping out the side door. I walked out into the bright sunlight. I walked down the driveway past the valet stand that was being set up. The valet looked at me and looked away, assuming I was just some day laborer leaving the job site. I walked 3 blocks to the public library. It was the only place I could go to change. I went into the handicapped stall in the men's room. It was large and clean. I hung my suit on the hook. I took off my old clothes. I took off the beige windbreaker that smelled of defeat. I took off the worn-out trousers. I washed my face in the sink. I splashed cold water on my neck. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were clear. My hands were steady. I began to dress. The shirt felt crisp against my skin. The starch was like armor plating. I buttoned the cuffs. I tied the tie. A Windsor knot. Perfect symmetry. I put on the vest. I buttoned it. I felt my posture change. You cannot slouch in a vest. It demands that you stand up straight. I put on the jacket. It still fit perfectly. I sat down and put on the shoes. I tied the laces tight. I stood up and looked in the mirror. The old man from the kitchen was gone. Marshall Turner was back. I checked my pocket. The recorder was there. The phone was there. I walked out of the bathroom. The librarian at the front desk looked up. Her eyes went wide. She did not recognize me as the man who had walked in 10 minutes ago carrying a gym bag. "Sir, can I help you?" she asked. "No, thank you, ma'am," I said. "I am just going to a party." I walked out of the library. A black town car was waiting at the curb. Alana was in the back seat. She rolled down the window. "You look like $1,000,000, Marshall," she said, smiling. "I feel like it," I said. I got in the car. The leather seats were cool. The air conditioning was quiet. "Are the police ready?" I asked. "They are meeting us around the corner," Alana said. "Sheriff Miller is personally coming. He saw the file. He is not happy about the fraud. And the building inspector is coming too. He wants to see that wall." I nodded. We drove back toward the house. The streets were lined with expensive cars now. Mercedes, BMWs, Lexuses. The guests had arrived. The party was in full swing. Haley would be holding court. She would be accepting gifts. She would be telling everyone about her wonderful renovation and her generous husband. She had no idea that the real guest of honor was about to arrive. "Park here," I told the driver. "Just around the bend. I want to walk in." Alana looked at me. "Are you sure?" "I am sure," I said. I walked out the back door like a thief. I am walking in the front door like the owner. I got out of the car. I adjusted my cuffs. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of magnolias and exhaust fumes. I started walking. I could hear the music from the house. I could hear the chatter of the crowd. I reached the driveway. The valet stepped forward to stop me, thinking I was a lost pedestrian. Then he saw the suit. He saw the look in my eyes. He stepped back and nodded. "Sir," he said. I walked up the path. The white balloons bobbed in the wind. The cutout storks seemed to mock me. I reached the front door. It was wide open. I could see into the foyer. It was packed with people. People holding champagne flutes. People laughing. I saw Haley standing near the staircase. She was glowing. She was holding a microphone. "Thank you all for coming," she was saying. "This house means so much to us. It is our sanctuary, our legacy." I stepped across the threshold. My heels clicked on the marble floor. It was a sharp, authoritative sound that cut through the murmur of the crowd. Heads turned. The chatter died down. A ripple of silence spread through the room like a wave. Haley looked up. She saw me. Her smile faltered. Her microphone hand dropped. Her eyes went wide. She did not see the dusty old man she had sent to the movies. She saw the landlord. And for the first time in 3 years, she looked afraid. I did not stop. I walked straight toward her. The crowd parted for me. They sensed that something was happening. They sensed that this was not part of the script. I stopped 3 feet in front of her. I looked at the guests. I looked at Terrence, who was cowering by the buffet table. And then I looked at Haley. "I am back," I said, "and I hope you kept the receipt for this party, because you are going to need a refund." The room was a sea of pastel colors and expensive fabrics. I saw faces I did not know. Wealthy faces. White faces. They held champagne flutes filled with vintage bubbles that I had paid for. They ate canapés off silver trays that I had polished. The air was thick with the smell of expensive perfume and the low hum of polite conversation. It was a gathering of wolves dressed in silk and linen, and I was the shepherd they thought they had eaten. I stood in the archway of the living room, the same archway I had sanded by hand in 1982. My bespoke suit felt like armor against my skin. The charcoal wool was heavy and reassuring. My shoes shone under the crystal chandelier. I did not look like the confused old man they had described to their friends. I did not look like the burden they were shipping off to a facility. I looked like the owner. For a moment, nobody moved. The string quartet in the corner faltered and stopped playing. The silence rippled outward from where I stood until it reached the staircase. Haley was standing there. She was holding a microphone. Her hand was frozen in midair. Her mouth was slightly open. The smile she had been wearing slipped off her face like a mask that had lost its glue. She stared at me. She blinked rapidly as if trying to clear a hallucination. I did not speak. I did not have to. My presence was the statement. I saw Terrence standing near the buffet table. He was holding a glass of wine. When he saw me, the glass slipped from his fingers. It hit the carpet with a dull thud. Red wine splashed onto his beige trousers. He did not even look down. He was staring at my face. He was staring at the judgment in my eyes. Haley recovered first. She is a predator, and predators adapt quickly. She gripped the microphone tighter. She forced her smile back into place. It was a brittle, terrifying thing. "Well, look who decided to join us," she said into the microphone. Her voice boomed through the speakers. "It is my father-in-law, Marshall. We thought you were resting comfortably in your room, Dad." She was trying to spin the narrative. She was trying to frame my appearance as the wandering of a senile mind. I took a step forward. The crowd parted for me. They moved away instinctively. They could feel the energy radiating off me. It was not confusion. It was cold, controlled fury. I did not answer her. I just kept walking until I was in the center of the room. I looked around at the guests. I saw Mrs. Vance Haley's mother sipping her drink. She looked at me with pure disdain. She leaned over to a woman next to her and whispered something. I knew what she said. She said, That is him. That is the problem. Haley laughed nervously. It was a high-pitched sound that grated on the nerves. She gestured to the crowd. Everyone, this is Marshall. He is having a little trouble with his memory lately, so he might be a little confused about why we are all here. But we are so glad he could come down to say hello before his transition. Transition. That was the word she used. Like I was upgrading my software, like I was moving to a new office. She made eviction sound like a promotion. She walked down 2 steps. She looked down at me from the staircase. She liked looking down on people. It made her feel tall. Marshall, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, why do not you go back upstairs? Terrence can help you. This is a lot of stimulation for you. We do not want you to get agitated. I looked at her. I looked at the microphone in her hand. I am not agitated, Haley, I said. My voice was not amplified, but it carried. It bounced off the high ceilings I had painted. It filled the room. I am just listening. Please continue. You were talking about the legacy. Haley froze. She did not expect me to speak so clearly. She expected mumbling. She expected shuffling. She looked at the guests. They were watching us. They were sensing the tension. They were realizing that this was not a happy family moment. This was a standoff. Haley laughed again. A short, sharp bark. Oh, Marshall, she said. You are so funny today. Yes, we were talking about the legacy. Our legacy. She turned back to the crowd. She decided to ignore me. She decided to bulldoze right over me. As I was saying, she announced, raising her voice to drown out the awkwardness. Terrence and I are so blessed to be the stewards of this beautiful home. It has been a labor of love to restore it. When we took over, it was very dated. It was dark. It was heavy. It was stuck in the past. She looked at me when she said, stuck in the past. It was a direct insult. She was calling my life dated. She was calling my history heavy. But we have a vision, she continued. We are opening it up. We are bringing in the light. We are making space for the next generation. There was a scattering of applause. People clapped because they did not know what else to do. They clapped for the pregnant woman in the silk dress because that is what polite society does. They ignore the uncomfortable truth standing in the middle of the room. I looked at Terrence. He was wiping the wine off his pants with a cocktail napkin. He looked like a child who had wet himself. He could not look at me. He was hiding behind the buffet table. Haley continued her speech. She was gaining confidence now. She thought she had neutralized me. She thought I was just standing there harmlessly. And the best news, she said, is that we have finally secured the future of the estate. Marshall has graciously decided to retire. He has realized that this house is too much for him. He wants to spend his golden years in peace and quiet, where he can get the care he needs. Care he needs, the code word for locking me away. She held up a hand. And because he is such a generous soul, he has gifted this home to us, to Terrence and me, to ensure that his grandson grows up in the family home. The crowd gasped politely. Someone shouted, "Hear, hear." Haley beamed. She looked like she had just won an Oscar. So today is a double celebration, she said. We are celebrating the arrival of baby Vance, and we are celebrating the official transfer of ownership. This house is now officially the Vance family residence. The Vance family residence. She had erased the name Turner. She had wiped my name off the map. My son stood there and let her do it. He let her take his name and bury it under hers. I felt a fire in my chest. It was hot and white, but my hands remained cool. My breathing remained steady. Haley raised her glass. So please join me in a toast, she said. To the future, to new beginnings, and to the end of the old ways. To the future, the crowd echoed. Glasses clinked. I did not raise a glass. I did not move. I stood there like a stone in a river. Haley looked at me. She smiled, a cruel, triumphant smile. She thought it was over. She thought she had said the words publicly and that made them true. She thought she had shamed me into silence. She lowered the microphone. She stepped down from the stairs. She walked toward me. She leaned in close so only I could hear. You look ridiculous in that suit, Marshall, she whispered. Go upstairs before you embarrass yourself further. The nurse from Sunset Hills is coming at 4 o'clock to evaluate you. Be ready. I looked at her. I saw the greed in her eyes. It was ugly. It was a hunger that could never be satisfied. I reached into my pocket. I did not pull out a handkerchief. I did not pull out a pill bottle. I pulled out the recorder. I held it up. The red light was blinking. Haley frowned. What is that? She asked. I smiled. It was the smile of a man who has just laid the final brick in a wall. It is the future, Haley, I said loud enough for the people nearby to hear, and it is recording. I turned away from her. I walked toward the fireplace. I stood in front of the hearth I had built with stones from the river. I turned to face the room. "Excuse me," I said. My voice was deep. It was the voice of a man who has spent 40 years shouting over the noise of table saws and planers. It cut through the chatter instantly. Everyone stopped drinking. Everyone stopped talking. They looked at the man in the charcoal suit standing by the fire. Haley looked panicked. She signaled to Terrence. "Do something," she mouthed. Terrence took a step forward, but he stopped. He was afraid. He saw something in my posture that he had never seen before. He saw the patriarch. "I am sorry to interrupt the toast," I said. I looked at each face in the room. I made eye contact with the wealthy bankers and the socialites. I wanted them to remember this moment. "My daughter-in-law has a wonderful imagination," I continued. "She tells a beautiful story. But in the restoration business, we have a saying. You can paint over rot, but the structure will still collapse." Haley rushed forward. She tried to grab my arm. "Marshall, stop it," she hissed. "You are making a scene." I pulled my arm away. I did not touch her. I simply moved out of her reach. "I am not making a scene, Haley," I said. "I am making a correction." I reached into my inside jacket pocket. I pulled out a folded document. It was not the deed she thought I had signed. It was the copy of the LLC operating agreement, and behind it was the eviction notice Alana had prepared that morning. "You see," I said, addressing the crowd, "this house does not belong to the Vance family. It does not belong to the Turner family either." The room went deadly silent. You could hear a pin drop on the Persian rug. "This house belongs to a corporation," I said. "A corporation that I manage. And as of this morning, that corporation has sold this property." Haley's face went white. It was the color of the lilies in the vase. "Sold," she whispered. "What are you talking about? You cannot sell it. You signed the deed." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had called me a nappy-headed miser. "I signed a piece of paper you gave me," I said. "But you forgot to check the title, Haley. You cannot gift what you do not own personally. The deed you have is worthless. It is a piece of paper signed by a tenant." I took a step closer to her. "And the real owner," I said, "has decided that he does not want tenants who destroy load-bearing walls. He does not want tenants who abuse the elderly, and he certainly does not want tenants who try to erase history." I pointed to the front door. "The new owner is very strict," I said. "He wants the property vacated." Haley looked at the door. She looked at Terrence. She looked back at me. She was trembling. "You are lying," she screamed. She lost all composure. She stomped her foot like a spoiled child. "You are a senile old liar. You are making this up. Terrence, tell him. Tell him we own this house." Terrence looked at me. He looked at the document in my hand. He knew. Deep down, he knew. He knew I never did anything without a plan. He knew I measured twice and cut once. "Dad," he whispered, "what did you do?" "I did what I had to do, Terrence," I said. "I protected the asset." I looked back at the crowd. "I am afraid the party is over," I said. "The police are on their way to escort the trespassers off the premises. I would suggest you all finish your drinks and leave, unless you want to be named in the police report as witnesses to elder abuse and fraud." The word police broke the spell. The guests began to move. They put down their glasses, they grabbed their purses, they moved toward the door. They did not want scandal. They wanted to be as far away from this disaster as possible. Haley stood alone in the middle of the room. The crowd flowed around her like water around a rock. She looked small. She looked defeated. But she was not done. She had one card left to play. "You cannot do this," she screamed. "I am pregnant. You cannot kick a pregnant woman out of her home." I looked at her. I felt a twinge of sadness. Not for her, but for the child. "It is not your home, Haley," I said softly. "It never was. You never saw a home. You only saw a house. You saw square footage. You saw an asset. You never saw the love that built it." I checked my watch. "You have 48 hours, I said. Then I turned my back on her. I walked over to the buffet table. I picked up a glass of wine. I took a sip. It was good wine. It tasted like justice. Behind me I heard Haley sobbing. I heard Terrence trying to comfort her. I heard the guests whispering as they fled, but I did not turn around. I looked at the painting over the fireplace. It was a painting of Etta. She was smiling. I raised my glass to her. "We are almost done, Etta," I whispered. "Just one more swing of the hammer." The last of the guests hurried out the front door, clutching their designer handbags and avoiding eye contact. They fled like rats, sensing a sinking ship, leaving only the wreckage of the party behind. The room was suddenly vast and empty, littered with half-eaten appetizers and abandoned champagne flutes. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was heavy and suffocating, like the air before a thunderstorm. Haley stood in the center of the room, trembling. Her face was a mask of ruined mascara and red, blotchy rage. She looked at the closing door, and then she turned slowly to face me. The transformation was terrifying. The sweet, expectant mother was gone. In her place was a creature of pure malice. "You ruined it," she screamed. Her voice cracked and echoed off the high ceilings. "You senile, jealous old man. Do you have any idea what you just did? That was the mayor wife. That was the bank president. You just humiliated us in front of all of Atlanta." I stood by the fireplace, perfectly still. I adjusted the cuffs of my suit. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. "I did not humiliate you, Haley," I said calmly. "I simply introduced you to reality. You have been living in a fantasy where I am dead and you are rich. I just woke you up." She marched toward me, her hands balled into fists. Terrence ran after her, trying to hold her back, but she shook him off like a rag doll. "I am calling the police," she hissed. "I am having you committed tonight. You are dangerous. You are delusional. You think you sold this house. You own nothing. I have the deed. I have the signature." She reached for her phone. Her fingers were shaking so hard she could barely unlock the screen. "Go ahead," I said. "Call them. But you might want to save your battery." "Why?" she snapped, looking up. "Because they are already here." As if on cue, the heavy oak front door pushed open. It did not open timidly. It opened with the weight of the law behind it. Sheriff Miller stepped into the foyer. He is a man I have known for 20 years. A man who buys his fishing bait at the same shop I do, a man who respects the truth. Behind him was Alana Hart, holding her leather briefcase like a weapon, and behind her were 2 uniformed deputies. Haley froze. Her phone clattered to the floor. She looked at the sheriff, and for a split second she thought he was there to save her. She thought her narrative of the crazy father-in-law had worked. "Oh, thank God," she cried out, rushing toward them. "Sheriff, please help us. He has gone crazy. He is threatening us. He kicked all our guests out. He thinks he is a corporation. Please take him away." Sheriff Miller did not smile. He did not step forward to comfort her. He stood like a wall of blue granite. He looked at Haley, and then he looked at me. He nodded his head once in a gesture of respect. "Mr. Turner," the sheriff said, "we are here as requested." Haley stopped dead. "Requested," she repeated. "Who requested you?" "I did," I said, stepping forward. Alana walked past the sheriff. Her heels clicked sharply on the marble floor, a rhythm of impending doom. She walked straight to the table where the deed of gift still lay where Haley had left it. She picked it up. She looked at it with professional disdain. "Mrs. Vance," Alana said, her voice crisp and clear. "My client, Mr. Turner, asked us to be here to oversee the eviction process and to document the damages to the property." "Eviction." Haley laughed, a hysterical, high-pitched sound. "You are the lawyer, right? The one who drew this up. You know this house is ours." He signed it. "Look at the signature." Alana dropped the paper back onto the table. It fluttered down like a dead leaf. "I know what he signed," Mrs. Vance, Alana said. "I wrote it. He signed a conditional gift deed. A deed that transfers ownership only upon the successful admission of Marshall Turner into a long-term care facility for the medically incompetent." So Haley shouted, "He is going on Monday, so the house is ours." Alana shook her head slowly. "No, because the condition was based on a fraudulent premise. Mr. Turner is not incompetent. In fact, I have here a sworn affidavit from Dr. Robinson, the chief of neurology at Grady Memorial Hospital, dated yesterday. It certifies that Marshall Turner scores in the top percentile for cognitive function for his age group. He is sound of mind, Mrs. Vance, which means the condition for the gift can never be met. The deed is void." Haley stared at her. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. But he forgot the stove," she stammered. "He forgot the internet password. He is foggy." I stepped closer. My shadow fell over her. "I never forgot the stove, Haley," I said. "And I never forgot the password. I just let you think I did. I let you build your entire future on a foundation of lies just to see how high you would build it before it collapsed. Terrence spoke up then. His voice was small and trembling. "Dad, please. This is a misunderstanding. We can fix this. Do not bring the police into this." I looked at my son. The shame I felt for him was a physical weight in my gut. "It is too late for that, Terrence," I said. "You crossed the line when you let your wife hire men to take a sledgehammer to my life." I pointed to the gaping hole in the wall, the dust still settling on the floor. "Sheriff," I said, "that is the evidence." Sheriff Miller walked over to the hole. He looked at the torn drywall. He looked at the splintered studs. He took a camera out of his pocket and snapped a photo. Flash. Flash. Unauthorized demolition of a load-bearing wall in a historic district, Alana recited. Malicious destruction of property belonging to the Turner Restoration LLC and endangerment of the primary occupant. Haley whirled around. "It is my house," she screamed. "I can break a wall if I want to." "It is not your house," Alana said firmly. "As Mr. Turner told you, this house belongs to an LLC, and that LLC is owned by a trust. And do you know what happens to the trust if the beneficiaries attempt to defraud the trustee?" Haley looked at Terrence. Terrence looked at the floor. "We lose it," Terrence whispered. "We lose everything." Alana nodded. "Exactly. The poison pill clause. By attempting to have Marshall declared incompetent for financial gain, you have triggered the immediate dissolution of your beneficiary status. You are no longer heirs. You are trespassers." Haley looked around the room frantically. She looked at the expensive furniture she had bought with my money. She looked at the nursery she was building. She realized it was all slipping away like sand through her fingers. "No," she shrieked. "No, this is not fair. I am pregnant. You cannot do this to a pregnant woman. I have rights." I walked until I was standing right in front of her. I was close enough to see the fear in her eyes. I was close enough to smell the stale champagne on her breath. "You talk about rights, Haley," I said. "What about my right to dignity? What about my right to sleep in my own home without fear of being gassed or burned? What about my right to be a father and a grandfather without being treated like a piece of broken furniture?" I leaned in. "You wanted space," I said softly. "You said this house was too cramped with me in it. You said I took up too much room." I looked around the grand foyer. I looked at the high ceilings. I looked at the open doors. "You were right, Haley." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face, waiting for the blow. "This house is too small," I said, my voice hard as iron. "It is far too small. There is not enough room in here for your lies and my truth to live together. So one of us has to go. And since I hold the deed, the keys, and the truth, I think it is going to be you." Sheriff Miller stepped forward. He placed a heavy hand on Terrence S.'s shoulder. "Mr. Vance, Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice rumbling like a diesel engine, "I am going to have to ask you to vacate the premises. You can grab some personal essentials, but everything else stays until the lawyers sort it out." "Now?" Haley gasped. "But we have nowhere to go. Our apartment lease ended last month." "That sounds like a personal problem," the sheriff said. "You have 10 minutes. Haley looked at Terrence. "Do something," she screamed at him. "You coward! Do something." Terrence looked at me. He had tears in his eyes. "Dad, please. Just for tonight. Let us stay one night." I looked at him. I remembered the night he was born. I remembered holding him in this very hallway, promising to protect him from the world. But I had failed to protect him from himself. "I am protecting you, Terrence," I said. "I am teaching you the lesson I should have taught you years ago. A man who does not respect his roots has no future. If I let you stay tonight, you will never learn. You will never grow." I turned my back on them. 10 minutes. "Sheriff," I said. I walked toward the kitchen. I did not look back. I heard Haley screaming insults. I heard Terrence sobbing. I heard the heavy boots of the deputies following them up the stairs to supervise their packing. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water from the tap. My hand was steady. Alana followed me in. She closed the door, muffling the noise from the hallway. "You did it, Marshall," she said softly. I drank the water. It was cool and clean. "It is not over yet, Alana," I said. "They are leaving the house. But they still have my money. They still have the debts they took out in my name." "We will get it back," she said. "The forensic accountant is already working on the credit card fraud charges. That is the next step." I nodded. I heard the front door slam, a heavy final sound. I walked to the window. I watched them walking down the driveway. Haley was dragging a suitcase. Her dress ruined her hair wild. Terrence was following her carrying a box, his head hung low. They looked like refugees from a war they had started and lost. They walked past the cutouts of the storks. They walked past the white balloons. They walked out of the gate and onto the street. I watched until they turned the corner. The house was silent. The string quartet was gone. The guests were gone. The parasites were gone. I was alone. But for the first time in months, the air in the house felt light. It felt breathable. I walked back into the living room. I looked at the hole in the wall. It was ugly. It was a scar. But scars heal. And scars are proof that you survived. I picked up the recorder from the table where I had left it. I turned it off. I have enough room now, I whispered to the empty room. I sat down in my armchair. The leather groaned familiarly. I closed my eyes. The king had returned. But the kingdom was in ruins. Now the real work would begin, the work of rebuilding. Not just the wall, but the man. The front door clicked shut behind the last fleeing guest, and the sound was like a period at the end of a long and painful sentence. The house was finally quiet, but the air was thick with the dust of the broken wall and the smell of impending ruin. Haley stood in the center of the foyer. Her chest was heaving. Her eyes darted around the room looking for an exit or a weapon or a miracle. But there were no miracles left in the Turner house today, only consequences. Terrence had collapsed onto the bottom step of the grand staircase. He held his head in his hands. He looked like a man who had been running a race for years and had finally hit the wall. He knew. I could see it in the slope of his shoulders. He knew that the eviction was just the opening act. The main event was sitting in Alana Hart's briefcase. Haley turned to me. She tried to rally her fury one last time. She tried to summon the arrogance that had carried her through 3 years of bullying me. Fine, she spat. You want us to leave? We will leave. We do not want to stay in this dusty old mausoleum anyway. We will take our equity and go. We will buy a better house, a modern house, one without you in it. I looked at her. I felt a strange sense of pity. She was standing on the edge of a cliff, and she thought she was standing on a gold mine. Equity, I repeated. What equity, Haley? The equity we put in, she shouted. The renovations, the improvements, and the refinance money. We are entitled to half the value of the home. That is the law. We have been paying the mortgage for 3 months. I looked at Alana. She stepped forward. She placed the briefcase on the hall table next to the vase of white lilies. The sound of the latches snapping open was loud in the silent room. Click. Click. Mrs. Vance Alana said, her voice calm and professional. You seem to be laboring under a significant misunderstanding regarding the ownership structure of this property. She pulled out a thick document bound in blue paper. This, she said, holding it up, is the operating agreement for Turner Restoration, LLC. As Mr. Turner tried to tell you, this limited liability company holds the title to the property. Marshall Turner is the manager. The sole member of the LLC is the Etta Turner Trust. Haley waved her hand dismissively. I do not care about your legal mumbo-jumbo. We refinanced the house last month. The bank approved it. The money is in our account. That proves we have ownership. Alana stopped. She looked at Haley, and then she looked at Terrence. Her expression shifted from professional to severe. You refinanced, she asked slowly. You took out a loan against the property. Yes, Haley said triumphantly. We took out a line of credit for $200,000. To pay for the nursery and the baby expenses. The bank wired the funds last week, so you cannot kick us out. The bank has a lien on this house now, which means we have a stake in it. I looked at Terrence. He had stopped breathing. He was staring at the floor, his face the color of gray ash. Alana pulled another file from her bag. This one was red. That is interesting, she said. Because in order to refinance a property owned by an LLC, the manager of the LLC must sign the loan documents. And since Marshall Turner is the manager, he would have to be the one to sign. She walked over to Terrence. She stood over him like a judge. Marshall, did you sign a loan document for $200,000? She asked me without looking away from my son. No, I said. My voice was quiet, but it filled the room. I have signed nothing except the fake deed you gave me this morning. Haley let out a nervous laugh. Well, you must have signed it, she said. Maybe you forgot. You forget everything these days. That is why we handled it. We helped you with the paperwork. Alana opened the red file. She pulled out a copy of a loan application. It was from the First National Bank. At the bottom of the page was a signature. Marshall Turner. It looked like my signature. It had the same slant, the same loops. But I knew my hand. and I knew my son's hand. I had taught him how to write. I had watched him practice his cursive at the kitchen table for hours, and I recognized the hesitation in the T. Alana held the paper up to the light. "This document is dated October 15th, she said. On October 15th, Marshall was at my office reviewing the trust fund performance. We have security footage of him entering and leaving my building. He was with me for 3 hours. He could not have been at the bank signing this." She turned the paper around so Terrence could see it. "Terrence," she said softly, "who signed this?" Terrence did not answer. He began to rock back and forth slightly. Haley rushed forward. "He signed it," she said, pointing at me. "He signed it at the kitchen table. I saw him. He is lying. He is trying to frame us." Alana shook her head. "No, Mrs. Vance. We have already sent a copy of this to a forensic handwriting analyst. The preliminary report came back this morning." She pulled out a single sheet of paper. "The analyst concluded that there is a 99% probability that the signature is a forgery," Alana read. "And furthermore, the pressure points and stroke order match samples of handwriting belonging to Terrence Vance Turner." The silence that followed was absolute. Haley stopped screaming. She looked at Terrence. She looked at the paper. She looked at the police officers standing by the door. "Forgery," she whispered. I walked over to my son. I stood in front of him. I wanted him to look at me. I wanted him to see the father he had betrayed. "Why, Terrence?" I asked. "Why did you do it? I gave you a roof over your head. I gave you food. Why did you steal my name?" Terrence looked up. His eyes were red and wet. "We needed the money, Dad," he choked out. "Haley, she wanted the nursery. She wanted the car. The credit cards were maxed out," she said. "She said you would never know. She said you were too old to notice. She said the house was going to be ours anyway, so it was just an advance." Haley gasped. "You shut up, Terrence," she shrieked. "Do not you dare blame this on me. You told me it was legal. You told me he gave you power of attorney." "I never gave him power of attorney," I said. Alana turned to Sheriff Miller. "Sheriff," she said, "you have heard the confession. You have the forensic report, and you have the victim's statement." Sheriff Miller stepped forward. He reached for his belt. The sound of leather creaking was loud in the room. He walked over to Terrence Turner. The sheriff said, his voice heavy with regret, "Stand up, son." Terrence stood up. His legs were shaking so hard I thought he would fall. He looked at me. He looked for the father who had saved him from bullies in elementary school. He looked for the father who had paid his bail when he got caught shoplifting at 16. "Dad," he whispered. "Help me." I looked at him. My heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to intervene, to write a check, to make it go away, to save my boy. But I looked at the hole in the wall. I looked at Haley standing there with her eyes full of hate, and I knew that saving him now would only destroy him later. He had to learn. He had to feel the weight of his actions. "I cannot help you, Terrence," I said. "You broke the law. You stole from your family. You tried to gaslight your father into an asylum so you could cover up your crime. That is not something I can fix with a hammer and glue." Sheriff Miller turned Terrence around. "Put your hands behind your back," he said. Terrence sobbed. A raw, ugly sound. I watched as the sheriff pulled out the handcuffs. The metal glinted in the light of the chandelier. Click, click, the sound of my son being handcuffed in the foyer of the house I built for him was the most painful sound I have ever heard. It hurt more than the death of my parents. It hurt more than the physical aches of age. Sheriff Miller recited the rights. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Haley backed away. She backed away until she hit the wall. She was shaking her head. "This has nothing to do with me," she said. "I did not sign it. It was him. He did it. I am just the wife. I did not know." Alana turned her gaze on Haley. "Actually, Mrs. Vance," Alana said, "we traced the funds. The $200,000 was deposited into a joint account. And within 48 hours, $70,000 was transferred to a contractor for the demolition. $30,000 was sent to a luxury car dealership. And $10,000 was spent at a maternity boutique. You spent the proceeds of the fraud. That makes you an accessory. And since you coerced him into doing it, you could be looking at conspiracy charges." Haley's face went slack. The fight went out of her. She realized she was not a spectator. She was a participant. "But I am pregnant," she whispered. "I am having a baby." "Then I suggest you get a very good lawyer," Alana said. "And I suggest you save whatever money you have left because your assets are about to be frozen pending the investigation." Sheriff Miller led Terrence toward the door. Terrence was weeping openly now, his head hung low. He passed by me. He did not look up. I watched my son being led away like a criminal. I wanted to look away, but I forced myself to watch. I owed it to Etta to see the truth. When the door closed behind them, the room felt enormous. Haley was left standing alone. She looked at me. Her eyes were full of terror. "Marshall," she said. Her voice was a whimper. "Marshall, please. He is in jail. I have no money. I have nowhere to go. Please, you cannot throw me out." "Not now." I looked at her. I saw the woman who had called me a miser, the woman who had wished for my death, the woman who had driven a wedge between a father and son that might never be removed. I walked over to the table. I picked up the fake deed she had signed. "You have the keys to the car," I said. "I suggest you use them before the repo man comes for that too." "But where will I go?" she cried. "I do not know, Haley," I said. "But you are young, you are smart. I am sure you will figure it out. Maybe you can find someone else to trick, but it will not be me, and it will not be in this house." Sheriff Miller's deputy stepped forward. "Ma, he said. "You need to leave. Now." Haley looked at me one last time. There was no remorse in her eyes, only hatred. She grabbed her purse. She did not pack a bag. She ran. She ran out the front door, leaving it wide open. I listened to her heels clatter down the steps. I heard her car start. I heard the tires squeal as she peeled out of the driveway. She was gone. Alana walked over to me. She put a hand on my arm. "Are you okay, Marshall?" she asked. I looked at the empty space where my son had stood. "No, Alana," I said. "I am not okay. I just sent my only child to prison." "You did not send him there," Alana said gently. "He walked there himself. You just refused to walk in with him." I nodded. I knew she was right. But being right did not make it hurt less. I walked over to the front door. I looked out at the street. The sun was beginning to set. The sky was turning a deep bruised purple. I closed the door. I turned the deadbolt. I walked back into the center of the foyer. I looked up at the ceiling. I looked at the molding I had carved. I looked at the walls I had painted. It was just a house. Without family, it was just wood and stone. But it was my wood, and it was my stone. I walked to the hole in the wall. I picked up a piece of broken plaster. I crushed it in my hand until it turned to dust. "I will fix this," I whispered. I would fix the wall. I would fix the finances. I would fix the reputation of the Turner name. I did not know if I could fix Terrence. That was a restoration project that might be beyond my skill. But I would wait. I would be here when he got out. And maybe when the pride was stripped away, we could start rebuilding the foundation. But for now, I was the master of a silent house. I turned to Alana. "Do you want some tea?" I asked. She smiled a sad, tired smile. "I would love some tea, Marshall." We walked into the kitchen together, leaving the ghosts in the foyer. The war was over. The king had kept his throne, but the victory tasted like ashes. The blue lights of the police cruiser flashed against the white columns of the porch, creating a rhythmic strobe of tragedy. Terrence stood by the open door of the squad car. His hands were cuffed behind his back. The expensive blazer he wore to impress his wealthy friends was bunched up and wrinkled. He looked small. He looked like a child who had broken a window and was waiting for his father to pay for it. But the checkbook was closed. He screamed after Haley's car as it disappeared down the street. I watched him twist his body, trying to see her taillights fade away. She did not look back. She did not stop. She took the car, and she took the freedom, and she left him with the handcuffs. That was the woman he destroyed our family for. That was the love he chose over loyalty. She sacrificed him to save herself without a second of hesitation. He turned his face to me. Tears were streaming down his cheeks, mixing with the snot running from his nose. He looked pathetic. He looked broken. "Dad, please," he begged. His voice was a high-pitched wail that cracked in the night air. "You can stop this. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you gave me permission to sign it. I will pay it back. I swear I will pay it back. Do not let them take me to jail. I cannot survive in there. Dad, please. I am your son." I walked down the steps slowly. My knees hurt, but I stood tall. I stopped a few feet away from him. I did not touch him. I did not offer him a handkerchief. I looked him in the eye. "You are asking me to save you from the consequences of your own greed, Terrence," I said. "You are asking me to lie to the law to cover up your lies. I did that for 30 years. I shielded you from every hard knock. I paid every fine. I fixed every mistake. And look what it made you. It made you a man who steals from his father to buy a woman who hates him." "Dad." "I am sorry," he sobbed. "I am so sorry." "I know you are sorry," I said softly. "You are sorry you got caught. You are sorry the money ran out. But you are not sorry for what you did to me." I looked at the sheriff and nodded. It was the hardest nod of my life. "No, son," I said. "I am not going to call the lawyer. I am not going to post bail. Tonight, you are going to sleep on a cot that you did not pay for. You are going to sit in a cell with nothing but your thoughts. You skipped the class on how to be a man for 32 years. Tonight class is finally in session." The deputy guided his head into the car. The door slammed shut. It was a heavy, final sound. I watched the car pull away down the street. I stood alone on the driveway of the house I owned. The silence returned. It was painful, but it was clean. It has been 6 months since the blue lights faded from my driveway, and the silence returned to my life. I sold the Victorian house. I could not live there anymore. The hole in the wall was fixed, but the memories of betrayal were too deep to sand away. A young couple bought it. They are full of dreams, and they treat the wood with respect. I wish them well. I live in a penthouse apartment in Midtown now. It is smaller, but it is filled with light. There are no stairs to hurt my knees. There is no dust. And most importantly, there are no lies. I rented a small studio space 3 blocks away where I have set up my new workshop. It is a quiet place. I do not take every job that comes along anymore. I only take the ones that speak to me. The Louis XIV chair sits in the corner of my living room. I finished the restoration last week. The leg is healed. If you look very closely, you might see a faint line where the wood was joined. But that line does not make the chair less valuable. It makes it real. It tells a story of survival. That is what I am now. I am a restoration project. I visited Terrence once. He looks thinner. The arrogance is gone. He cried when he saw me. He did not ask for money. He did not ask for a lawyer. He just asked how I was. It was the first time in 10 years he asked me that question and actually waited for the answer. I told him I was good. I told him I was free. I do not know if we will ever be father and son in the way we were before. Trust is like a mirror. Once it is broken, you can glue it back together, but you will always see the cracks in your reflection. But at least now we are facing each other with honesty. Haley is gone. She moved back in with her parents. I heard she is suing Terrence for divorce. I heard she tells people she was the victim of a cruel old man. Let her talk. Her words cannot reach me up here. People ask me if I am lonely living by myself at 68. I tell them I have never been less lonely. I was lonely when I was living in a house full of people who looked through me. I was lonely when I was sitting at a dinner table being treated like a ghost. Now I have Alana. We have dinner every Tuesday. We laugh. We talk about Etta. We talk about the future. I have learned the hardest lesson a parent can learn. I learned that family is not defined by whose blood runs in your veins. It is defined by who respects you. It is defined by who protects your dignity when you are too tired to protect it yourself. A child who drains your spirit is not family. They are a parasite, and cutting them off is not cruelty. It is survival. My name is Marshall Turner. I am a master carpenter. I am a survivor, and for the first time in a long time, I am the master of my own house. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever had to make a hard choice to protect your peace, let me know in the comments. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more stories of truth and justice. Until next time, remember that your dignity is the one asset you can never afford to lose. I learned that being a parent does not mean being a martyr. For years, I confused love with endurance, thinking that if I just gave enough, my son would eventually respect me. But respect is not bought, it is commanded. We often fear losing our family so much that we lose ourselves in the process. But I discovered that a table for one set with dignity is far better than a banquet where you are treated like a beggar. Do not be afraid to close the door on those who only knock when they need something. Your peace is not a negotiable currency, and your legacy is defined by what you refuse to tolerate. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to draw a line in the sand with a family member? I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice. Until next time.